Nick Sirianni updating the two key Eagles, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown. The Sports Bash is live. Happy Hour Friday is here. I'm Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there. Wild Card Weekend is finally here. All of the conversation this week has kind of been about Jalen Hurts and whether he's going to be ready to go. He has essentially been cleared. He's practiced the last couple of days, but all of a sudden, A.J. Brown hasn't practiced. Nick was asked today, hey, how about those guys getting back on the same page? They haven't been on the same page this whole last couple of weeks. And he says, yeah, those guys have thrown the ball to each other plenty of times over the last couple of years. They're okay. As we get ready for this game, does anybody have an ominous feeling about the way that the Eagles have kind of handled these injuries these last couple of days here? A.J. Brown, it's all precautionary. Devontae Smith, it's precautionary. Or would you rather see these guys out there getting their last couple of reps together before they get into this game with the Green Bay Packers? I always, when you're getting ready for like a big tournament or, a big game, you want the guys that are going to be playing in that game. It's always frustrating. You're getting ready to do something and you have a guy that is standing in the place of a guy that you're like, well, this guy's not going to play all that much. And he's the guy getting all the reps right now. I want my guys getting the reps. And Nick Sirianni this week kind of giving his guys a little bit of a, taking the foot off the gas, letting those guys rest up, get ready, taking it to the extreme almost, right? They didn't play last week, and they didn't really practice them up until Wednesday. So you think about it, and you're thinking, man, these guys haven't had a lot of intensity all the way going back to when they played Dallas. So we'll see if it all works out for Nick and his crew. Obviously, a lot of scrutiny if it does not, of how they handled everything. And, hey, that's why you're the head coach, right? You make the decisions. You make the practice plan, and then you decide. Although I think that Vic Fangio has a lot to do with the practice plan, honestly, from what I've been told anyway, that Vic Fangio is the one who's kind of dictated the practice times and kind of changed some things around. But we got a lot to dive into today on the Sports Bash. It's a busy show on a Friday. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, as always on a Friday, kind of a weekend preview. A lot of stuff happening this weekend. If you haven't heard, there's playoffs this weekend. They start on Saturday, a doubleheader, a triple header on Sunday, and a one singular game on Monday night, which, I do want to address. It is sad to see what's happening with these fires in L.A., and I could not believe it's gotten, one of my best friends lives in L.A., and he's not very communicative when it comes to something like this. Like, it's like not a big deal, so he hasn't been like, holy mackerel. But he did get a text last night that basically told him he should evacuate his house and stuff, and then I read that they've moved the game to Arizona. I mean, this is some real-life stuff going on out there. I've seen some crazy, crazy videos of all this, and you're just thinking, man, a football game is about to happen this week, and like there's a party that's like, wow, this kind of stinks for the Rams. They don't get to play at home, all that stuff. But like, man, the fires that are going on out there, it's like life and death, man. So get them out of there. Go play the game someplace else, and who cares? Move on and just kind of – but it is kind of a shame of what has happened out there. It's crazy, the world that we live in sometimes. There's just a whole city on fire right now. It's just nuts. But, the Rams will play Monday night. The game is now in Arizona, home in the Cardinals, and they will be the host of the Rams and Minnesota Vikings game, and you can hear that game on 97.3 ESPN, so kind of a weird situation. I read last night it's only the second playoff game that will not be played at the team's home stadium. The last time it happened was 1936. And so you're talking about a long time ago, almost 100 years ago, when the last time a playoff game got moved out of the home stadium of the team. But this is a pretty big situation when you are thinking about what's going on out there. So we got all that happening. On top of that, the college football playoffs last night. What a game. I think I nailed the score, right? I might have been 28-24, 27-24. That was my pick last night.
The pick you gave was over. I didn't write
No,
down
when I said the score, I said, I think it's like 27-24, which is why I took the over. The over-under was like 40 something.
I just remember you took the over. That was one of
Yeah,
your
but
picks.
I gave the number, too. You weren't paying attention. That's okay.
You want me to write down everything you said?
I didn't say you had to write it down. I just thought maybe you'd listen to me, you know? I asked not much. Just listen to the damn show. That's all. Just listen to it. So that when I come on the next day and say I nailed the score, you can say, yes, you did. I heard you say that. Like last night in our text group. PG, he remembered. He said, that's the score you gave on the air today. See? He was listening.
What do you need me for?
He must be the guy doing his job. You must be the other guy.
Am I, though?
I was watching The Departed the other day.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I said, I don't remember if it was 27-24 or 28-24, but when I was giving the over, I said, I see a game like 27-24, somewhere
I
in
was
that
a little
range.
worried for you at first because in the first half it was as low scoring as humanly
as
possible.
usual in our text chain, I'm on one side, Todd's on the other.
Naturally.
He goes under, and all game he's giving it to me, and then he texts tick, 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 tick. So that I don't respond a whole lot. So last night I actually was watching a Netflix documentary during the first half. And then I picked up the game in the second half.
The first half was so bad you had to watch
I
something
went to
else?
Dirty Pop, Lou Pearlman's story, right? Backstreet Boys in sync. I wanted to see what happened with that whole Ponzi scheme. Anyway, So I'm getting hammered with text after text about the under and how great it is. And then I don't respond. So then finally I wrote back, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm on the over. And he's like, oh, of course. Now you're chiming in. I said, well, I haven't been paying attention to this game. You keep telling me tick, 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 tick. What am I paying attention for? Well,
you're giving me all the updates.
27-24. I said, not only did I take the over, I picked the score right on the nose.
Boom.
So I was a winner last night.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah, it was a fun game, though. Really good game. Like, that's a really good college football playoff game. Except, actually, it's a good game because of how – but the play was bad. Like, the quarterbacking in that game, the two offenses are terrible.
Yeah, that was a game where you knew going in there that the quarterbacks were not going to necessarily win you that game.
I mean, Aller has all this hype, and he's a guy that, announced that he's going back to school because, like, there might have been some thought he's good enough to go pro, and he makes a dreadful decision in that game.
And you see why he's not going pro this year.
And Riley Leonard's named the player of the game, and he had a terrible interception. Actually, I don't say terrible. The kid from Penn State made an unbelievable catch, but still, I mean.
Well, the one interception I looked at as that was definitely Riley's fault because he made a horrible read. The other one, you're right. The Penn State defender made an amazing play to get in front of that ball.
So, good games last night. James Franklin, man, again can't get it done. I mean, he looked dumbfounded when the touchdown happens. There's no one near the guy. I mean, he literally catches the ball wide open, nobody near him, and the look on Franklin's face is, I can't believe I have to answer these questions again, that I can't win this game. What do you do in that situation? He's a really good recruiter. He's obviously a good coach, but he just hasn't been able to win it. And it's like I'm a big proponent of just because you haven't doesn't mean you can't.
I mean, it goes back to the conversation. I know it's not apples to apples, but how many times, Mike, have you talked about how just because you're really good at calling plays or whatever doesn't mean you're good at clock management, right? Maybe James Franklin needs a man behind the curtain to help him with some of the game management.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a stigma that's attached to him that he just can't overcome, and that is it's unfortunate because. And listen, I'm no Penn State fan by any rights. I'm just trying to be objective here. I can't stand Penn State. But the guy's done a solid job of making them
relevant.
I don't say relevant. They've always been relevant, but he's done a solid job of making them like.
Well, I thought that James Franklin did a very good job at taking what Bill O'Brien did in the aftermath of the Joe Paterno situation, and Franklin took what O'Brien did to the next level. In terms of the recruiting, in terms of the visibility, and in terms of getting these like 5-star mega athletes come to Penn State again.
Yeah. 7-point fourth quarter deficit. Mitch Jeter. How about a guy named Jeter with the big go-ahead kick with 41 seconds left? A guy named Jeter being clutch.
Well, how about this? On the regular season, he was only hitting 50% of his field goals. In the postseason, he only was hitting 90% of his field goals.
There's what I'm talking about. Guy named Jeter being clutch. Second latest go-ahead score in a college football game regulation. And in that moment, kickers were 0 for 4 all time in go-ahead field goal attempts in the fourth quarter of a game in that situation, and Jeter wins it there. The teams combined for 31 points in the fourth quarter, so you're right. I was kind of feeling that over was not doing all that hot. Second most in a fourth quarter in a game in college football playoff history. 40 points in the 2016 Alabama-Clemson. That was like a pinball game, if you remember that one. It's only the third college football playoff game decided by 3 points or fewer, so we got a really good game last night. Can they do it tonight with Texas and Ohio State? By the way, Ohio State was involved in the last close one. Remember the game they lost to Georgia 42-41 back in 2022, and Alabama knocked off Georgia in that title game 26-23. That was another great game. That was the 2018 title game. And the Irish now, they have won 13 straight games, and it's their first national championship game. They lost to Alabama 42-14 back in 2012. They're looking to win their first national championship since 1988. They beat West Virginia, who was led by Major Harris, and the Irish, if they win this championship, it would be the first independent to win a national title since Miami did it in 1989. Then Miami went to the Big East after that. And really, Notre Dame is the last of the independents who have a legitimate chance. You know, I was listening to a conversation about this yesterday. You know, James Franklin made the comments that everybody should be in a conference and play a schedule. Notre Dame is kind of screwing themselves right now by not being in a conference, because by not being in a conference, they can never get the bye in the first round.
Correct.
They always will be, you know, playing in, I guess it's like not a wild card game, but they will never have a bye as one of those first four teams. Now, the other side of the argument was that people want that bye. All four of those teams actually lost. But, you know, the Irish as an independent cannot get the bye. So Penn State is now the third team in as many college football playoffs and the sixth college football team in history to lose when they led by 7 or more points in the fourth quarter. You know, you're watching that game last night, and all you keep thinking is Penn State's the better team here. And that's why the James Franklin thing. He is 1-15 all time versus top 5 opponents at Penn State. Think about that. You've played top 5 teams 16 times. The only head coach who has been worse in games is Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech, was 1-21 against top 5 schools. So, you know, Franklin can't get it done. Penn State loses. They're out. And now Notre Dame will play either Texas or Ohio State, and that game is tonight on 97.3 ESPN. And Notre Dame 7-0 against AP ranked opponents this year. It's the most AP-ranked wins in a season in program history. So this is a team that is breaking all sorts of records. Now, when I watch that Notre Dame team, I'm not thinking, man, this is a historically great Notre Dame program. I think it kind of tells you the state of college football right now. But we'll see. I'm looking forward to the game tonight. My dad actually said he's like, you know what I did last night for the first time in a long time, something I haven't done? Watched a college football game.
Wow.
Yeah, how about that? So college football game last night. You get another one tonight, Texas, Ohio State. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. And then, of course, tomorrow is the wild card weekend. A lot of people getting ready for the matchup between Philadelphia and the Packers. Couple quick thoughts on Philadelphia and the Packers as we get ready for the matchup. One, let's hear what John Gruden has to say. John Gruden, what's he doing? His stuff with Barstool now?
Well, the Barstool is separate. He's been doing the YouTube channel thing for a while. He does this thing where he just goes and he's John Gruden, basically John Gruden Uncensored. He just goes up there and just starts going nuts in this random room and breaks down games.
So John Gruden has a YouTube channel. By the way, you can watch the show today on the YouTube channel at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe there. We had a record number of people watching the show yesterday between X and YouTube. I mean, we had a huge audience on yesterday's show, so thank you to the people watching. Download the free mobile app, listen on your phone, watch on YouTube, watch on the X platform, listen on the radio. Hey, wherever we can get you. You have a device in your hand, however you want to consume us, make sure you follow us on the X platform at Mike Gill Show for updates. All right, John Gruden, you know, he goes all the way back to the Brazil game. And there's one guy on the Eagles that we haven't talked a whole heck of a lot, but this guy gave the Packers problems in Brazil. Yeah. 2 holding calls in that first game. We've talked a lot about this matchup, and we haven't really brought up Josh Sweat when we talk about the Eagles' pass rush. Can that be a guy that we are not really in? Are we not talking enough about Josh Sweat and what he provides for this team and the year that he's had? I think we're almost like held to and tied to, he had a down year last year. And by the way, the team, showed that they were unhappy with him. They kind of gave him like a pay reduction.
Yeah.
And you take a look at, I think we're like, Josh Sweat. Is Josh Sweat starting to win people back over? And is Josh Sweat one of the keys of the game this weekend? I think you can make a strong case that, man, if Josh Sweat can win his battle, that's something that you probably didn't think of going in. But he did have 8 sacks this year. Is Josh Sweat kind of an X factor in this game? That's something to watch out for, according to John Gruden. All right, one guy on the other side, who is a concern for the Eagles' defense, John Gruden? I agree if it's a problem for teams. I don't think it's a big problem for Philadelphia. I think Cooper DeJean is very good at noticing where your guy is on the field. He's smart. They communicate well. He'll follow him around, and the communication is key. This Eagles secondary, I talked about this weeks ago, and why I believe in the Eagles secondary is because when you watch them play, you take a look at the All-22, this team communicates. They're very good at communicating with each other, and you see very few breakdowns in coverage from this team. So, to me, what Gruden says, sure, Reed is a weapon. He had a big game against you the first time. So, if Gruden's going back to the first game and watching that tape, yeah, Reed's a problem. But Cooper DeJean was not in that first game. And, I think that's a big change as Reed has accounted for 16% of the Packers' offense this season. Guess what? Cooper DeJean, I think, is a neutralizer in that respect. All right, what is the key for the Eagles' defense against this Packers offense? He said one guy that you have to be concerned about is Reed, but what's the key to the game? Okay, he says stop the run. The first game, they did a decent job. They gave up 5 yards of carry to Jacobs. But he mentioned Davis, Carter, Milton Williams, and don't forget, Zach Bond had 15 tackles in that first game. Just got named to the All-Pro team. Don't forget his role in all of this and the ability of Philadelphia to tackle. Cooper DeJean's a good tackler. Zach Bond, good tackler. They win their battles up front with Davis, who I thought had his best game as a pro on Sunday against the Giants. And then, of course, it's Jalen Carter. And this is when the big-time players come up. Can Jalen Carter stand out and step up in this one? All right, one thing for Philadelphia. We all keep talking about the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. John Gruden details just how efficient he has been for Philadelphia. Yeah, I think the efficiency is something there. Is they don't ask him to throw a lot, but when they do, it's when they kind of lull you to sleep a little bit. He had the 5th best passer rating in football. He had the 8th best completion percentage. And you take a look at one thing I'm concerned about with Hurts is, hey, Is Green Bay going to kind of come after him? Are they going to send some rushers at him? Are they going to say, hey, here comes the boogeyman, Mr. Concussion guy. Are you going to want to take a hit up there? That's the one thing you do have to see how Green Bay approaches him. How about the Packers' safety situation, and that being possibly the biggest X factor in this game? You could even make an argument it doesn't matter. Philadelphia blitzed you for a 67-yard touchdown pass in Brazil. They had another long touchdown and a couple other big plays with Devontae Smith, who, by the way, just to give you guys some updates, Devontae Smith was a DNP today, back tightness. I always hate to hear back stuff. Back tightness, they're probably precautionary, not risking any of the guys like Smith
Correct.
and A.J. Brown. But when I hear back tightness, that's just one thing. You could wake up on Sunday morning and say, oh, man, my back just locked up on me. That's never fun. He's the second receiver, by the way, and both of them, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, both sat out practice today. Both kind of precautionary situations.
A.J. Brown was on.
Or this week, I should say.
Yeah, A.J. Brown sat out yesterday. Devonta sat out today.
And as you heard in the open, Nick Sirianni did confirm that Jalen Hurts has cleared the concussion protocol and that he will play in the wild card game. Not a surprise. He was a full participant yesterday, and we knew it would be a matter of time before the charade was over of all the nonsense of, oh, he hasn't been cleared. It's been 16 days. By the way, Dallas Goedert also a full participant, so he will be back and he will play as well. One thing to keep an eye on, Kenny Pickett was limited yesterday, and we'll see what his injury designation is today, because there has been some thought on whether Tanner McKee should be the backup anyway, and if Pickett is not 100%, why rush? Why even think about it? Just go to Kenny Pickett, go to Tanner McKee. I don't think a lot of people in our listening audience would have a lot of problems with that. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. All right, we're just starting off on a Happy Hour Friday. What do you have it on this Happy Hour Friday? We had Ross Tucker on yesterday. He gave us his pick. What is your pick? Let us know. 609-403-0973. What are you having for the Eagles game this weekend? All right, 425 right here on 97.3 ESPN. You're sitting on your couch. You're listening to Merrill and Mike. What are you cracking open on a Happy Hour Friday? Let us know. 609-403-0973. Here's what we want to know as well. Where are you watching the game on Sunday? You going out? Living room? You going to the game? Where are you watching the game on Sunday? Wild Card weekend's here. I want to hear from you. 609-403-0973. What are the top questions heading into the Eagles-Packers game? We'll talk to Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City about that. John McMullen. Hembo is here today. Paul Hembekitis from Greeny is going to join me at 3:30. We'll get all his stats and facts and everything you need to know about the game. Sal Paolantonio tonight at 5 o'clock. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. All right, 231 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. This hour is brought to you by Autumn Lake Healthcare Centers, skilled nursing rehab with elite-level care and a warm, vibrant atmosphere. Visit autumnlakehealthcare.com to find a location near you. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, sports columnist, joins us now with a look at all the stuff that's happening this weekend. We got the wild card weekend, college football playoffs, and so much more right now on the Sports Bash Live on a happy hour Friday. Mike McGarry joins me here to take a look at everything that's going on. And, Mike, we got the answer I guess we all thought was coming. Jalen Hurts has cleared the protocol. He will play. But now Devontae Smith has back tightness. He didn't practice today. A.J. Brown, he has a knee problem. They didn't practice him yesterday. He was back today. Ominous feel or just extra precaution?
Extra precaution in my mind. You know, not a week goes by of the NFL season. Anybody that plays fantasy football deals with it on a regular basis. You see guys, receivers, miss practice, limited in practice. I would fully expect, Smith and A.J. Brown to both be out there 100% and ready to go Sunday at 4:30.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles seemingly are 100% healthy for the most part. I mean, they don't have anybody missing from this game. Pretty big accomplishment to get to this stage of the game of the season. Not any injuries because Green Bay does have a couple. They lose Watson. They've got a couple other guys who are a little banged up here. When I ask you, Mike, the difference between these two teams talent-wise, what would you say stands out talent-wise in these two rosters?
Well, I think the Eagles' skill guys, Saquon Barkley, the wide receivers. I know Green Bay has some good wide receivers. Green Bay has a local guy in Bo Melton from Cedar Creek on the team. But I just think overall, you look at the difference makers on the field. You start at quarterback, you go to the receivers, you talk to Saquon Barkley, you talk defense, you talk the Eagles secondary. You talk Jalen Carter up front. The Eagles, just to me, have more guys at different places who can impact and change the game than the Green Bay Packers do.
Yeah, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, that matchup there. When you talk about, hey, the quarterbacks are the difference makers. Which of those two guys do you feel better about going into Sunday?
I feel better about Jalen Hurts right now. I think Jalen Hurts has that added dimension. He can do more damage to a defense with his ability to take off and run than Jordan Love. And I think Jalen Hurts, since the early part of the season, has been very, very smart with the football and has not committed a lot of turnovers. Jordan Love, on the other hand, tends to get a little careless with the football, tends to commit turnovers, and turnovers in the postseason will doom you.
Yes, they will. The Eagles turned the ball over 3 times in the opener against Green Bay in Brazil. They still won the game. One of the things about Green Bay that I find interesting is they were the hot team last year. They were like 500, 9-8, got into the playoffs, and then went ballistic against Dallas in that first game. Are you leery of this Green Bay team that even though they won 11 games this year, they don't feel like this team that everybody was so hot on earlier in the season?
Yeah, they don't feel like the team that went into the postseason last year where they were kind of like everybody was like, Green Bay's really playing well. They're on the upswing, and then they go into Dallas and wipe out the Dallas Cowboys. It's the exact same situation. Green Bay is going into, play the NFC East champion. I think it's going to be a different result. And you just pointed it out when you talked about the first game of the season. The Eagles won that game. The Eagles tried to give that game away. That was a game where Jalen Hurts was not smart with the football. Jalen Hurts almost threw a pick six. He threw a couple interceptions, and still the Eagles came out on top. I just think at home, Sunday afternoon, the Eagles are too talented a football team to go out in the first round of a playoff.
All right. Saying all that, Mike, over at pressofatlanticcity.com, your must-win column for this weekend is why the Super Bowl is must-win for the Eagles. So they're playing this Green Bay team. They're fully healthy. Why do you think the Super Bowl or bust is this season?
Well, a couple things right now. And in the column, I talked about, if you've been an Eagles fan since you started rooting for the team when you were 10 years old in 2000, you've seen 25 really outstanding seasons of football. you've had a couple of down seasons, but overall you've won, I think, 10 division titles. You've been to the playoffs more often than not. You've been to conference title games. You've been to 3 Super Bowls. But for all that success, you've only won 1 Super Bowl. And that kind of boggles the mind when you think about it, especially when you think over the same period. The Giants have won 2, Tampa's won 2, Pittsburgh's won 2, Baltimore's won 2. The Eagles have been too good for too long to have just 1 Super Bowl, Mike. And also this year, things seem to be aligning. They have Saquon Barkley, who ran for 2,000 yards. No NFL running back has ever run for 2,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. So Saquon Barkley his history says he's not going to be good next year as this year. You've got 2 top-flight coordinators in Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore with the team. Are they going to be with the team next year? This is a team that is built to win now, and they've got to take advantage of it right now. They're 2 drop passes away from being a team that finished the season 16-1. They won 14 games. To me, Mike, they've just been too good for too long to have 1 Lombardi trophy. They need to get 2. I mean, how do we live in a world where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have won more Super Bowls in the last 25 years than the Philadelphia Eagles?
Alex, good point. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Wild card weekend. Chargers, Texans. Feels like the Texans have been very disappointing this year. Chargers just nondescript, yet it feels like everybody's picking the Chargers here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's Houston kind of sputtered towards the end. They always seem to play that early Saturday afternoon game.
8 for 8 they are.
Yeah, every football game they've ever played, it's like the Houston Invitational down there, 3:30 on Saturday of Wild Card Weekend. C.J. Stroud has kind of taken a step backwards, and you're right about the Chargers. I don't have a good feel about the Chargers. Obviously, we've seen them a couple times on TV. They've got a good quarterback. I think people there like the Chargers. They like Harbaugh. They like him. They like the way he coaches. They like his past history of success. That combined with C.J. Stroud taking a step backwards this season, I think that's why a lot of people like the Chargers.
All right, Ravens and Steelers is the night game Saturday night. These 2 teams, obviously, bloodbath between them. But the Steelers seem like they are just have run out of gas as they get ready for the Ravens on the road. It feels like the Ravens finally figured the Steelers out when they played a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you said it best, run out of gas. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're off the highway now. They're on the shoulder. They're trying to coax the car to the exit. The exit sign's a mile up. There's gas there. Guess what, Mike? They're not going to make it. You look at that game, the spread is 9 or 10 points. When you look at that spread right there, that tells you all you need to know. I think the Ravens are going to cruise against the Steelers on Saturday night.
All right, the Sunday early game, Denver, another team that, they didn't play a lot of primetime games. Maybe you didn't see them all that much. They got a rookie quarterback. They haven't been to the playoffs in quite some time. And then the Bills, who seem to be there on primetime all the time. They got an MVP candidate. Just feels like a fait accompli for Buffalo. But is Denver dangerous?
Yeah, I mean, that's another game with a big spread that kind of catches your eye and say, maybe I'll take Denver with the points. I would do that. Sean Payton is an excellent coach. He's obviously won before in the playoffs. People who like Denver say, hey, give Sean Payton a week to game plan, see what he can cook up. I go, and this affects another game that we're probably going to talk about, go look up the record of rookie quarterbacks in their first ever playoff game. It's not good, and I don't think Denver's going to be able to overcome it on Sunday in Buffalo.
Yeah, well, we'll bounce over the 425 game, Philadelphia and Green Bay. You can listen to that game on 97.3 ESPN. And then that'll be followed by Washington and Tampa, another rookie quarterback. Baker Mayfield, 41 touchdowns, second most in Tampa history behind Tom Brady for a single season. And this Buccaneers team just kind of lives in anonymity down there because they're in that NFC South division. But the Commanders, they get all the hype because of Jaden Daniels. But, man, I kind of like Tampa in this spot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Baker Mayfield underrated. I think Tampa better than we think. Baker Mayfield had put together some quality playoff performances in his career, both at Cleveland and with Tampa. Remember what they did to the Eagles last week? And I know Jaden Daniels, I love Jaden Daniels. I've been on him since week 1. You're right. There's the hype down there. They've turned that franchise around, Washington. But again, I come back to rookie quarterbacks in their first playoff game, especially against that Tampa defense. I'd love to see the Commanders and Jaden Daniels win in advance. But, I'm going to trust the trend of rookie quarterbacks struggling, and I think Tampa's going to come out of that game.
All right, there you go. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. That is Wild Card Weekend. Monday, we'll take a little bit closer look at the Monday night game, which is now in Arizona with all the wildfires going on down there in L.A. Sad situation there. They had to move that game out. College football, Penn State, another heartbreaking loss. Notre Dame is in the championship game. Who wins tonight and goes to the first ever college football playoff 12-team tournament final?
Well, I think Ohio State playing the way they played, especially the way they bounced back after that Michigan loss and the high level they've shown in the first games here in the college football playoffs, I think Ohio State would be the team to watch. And how lucky is this college football playoff? The first time they go to 12 teams, they get Notre Dame in the final game. That's got to be a ratings bonanza. And what really struck me about that game last night, Mike, was Marcus Freeman. We talk about what do head coaches do, and head coaches sometimes are not about X's and O's. Head coaches are about getting the organization ready to play, ready to survive adversity, and Marcus Freeman did a great job of that with Notre Dame, overcoming that loss to Northern Illinois and then running the table the rest of the way and now finding themselves in a championship game. I couldn't be more impressed by the overall head coaching job that Marcus Freeman did. And it relays to Nick Sirianni, because people look at Sirianni and say, well, he doesn't do this. He doesn't call the plays. What's he do? What's his impact? No, your job as a head coach is to get that team ready to play every week and to manage the game. Marcus Freeman did it for Notre Dame. Nick Sirianni has done it for the Eagles so far this year.
All right, I want to flip over to James Franklin, 1-15. What do you do in this spot? He's obviously got that program. He recruits. They're always relevant. But at some point, do you just have to change it, or do you say just because you can't, because you haven't, doesn't mean you can't, and just keep on going with him?
Yeah, I think you've got to keep going. First of all, he's a tremendous recruiter. Be careful of what you wish for, right? You don't know. You bring somebody else in and think they're going to go to the next level, you could end up quickly taking 2 or 3 or 4 steps backwards. So if I was a Penn State fan, and I'm not, I would be frustrated by the record. It's almost like the record is so poor against top 5 teams. Even if you set out to lose all those games, you'd probably stumble your way into 2 victories, right? Not just 1. You figure out a way to win 2 or 3 just by the odds. I understand people are frustrated, but the guy is a tremendous recruiter. They beat everybody they're supposed to be. They made the college football semifinals. As frustrating as it is, as frustrating as he can be at times, I don't know how you make a switch because, be careful what you wish for. You bring somebody in there, and it could slide backwards quickly.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. The Eagles and the Packers this Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's get your overall take. Who wins that game and why?
I think the Eagles win again. I just think the Eagles are primed for a big run here through the playoffs. Again, more playmakers at different spots. The ability to run the ball with Saquon Barkley hurts his ability to get that key run for those key gains. Mix in some timely passes down the field to Smith and A.J. Brown. I think the defense, like I wrote in my column, is as good as it's been since Jim Johnson was the defensive coordinator under Andy Reid. They've got playmakers there. They've got quality talent in the secondary. They're healthy. I'll take the Eagles 35-21 on Sunday and advancing to the next round. I think right now, again, as I wrote, I think this is Super Bowl or bust for the Philadelphia Eagles. Everything is set up for them.
35-21, kind of a breather there for Philadelphia, going away with the win. All right, Happy Hour Friday, Mike McGarry. We will talk to you on Monday's show.
Okay, guys, see you down the road. Enjoy the weekend.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. He likes the Eagles 35-21. Big win. Handles the Green Bay Packers. 35-21, Mike McGarry. Give us your pick. Give us your score. Where are you watching the game on Sunday? You going out? You hanging in? You going to the game? 609-403-0973. Text me now. What are you having? Where are you watching the game? It's a Happy Hour Friday. Get involved in the show. John McMullen with all the latest news and notes. Is he concerned at all about Devontae Smith? He did not practice today. Hembo will join me at 3:30. Paul Hembekitis from Greeny going to be coming up and tell us all the stats and facts you need to know about the Eagles and Packers. Coming up here on the Sports Bash Live, a couple of thoughts and betting trends for tonight's college football playoff game. That's next. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. 2:51 this hour brought to you by Autumn Lake Health Care Centers. Visit autumnlakehealthcare.com to find a location near you. All right, Texas, Ohio State, meeting for the first time since the Fiesta Bowl, 2009. Texas wins that game 24-21. Colt McCoy, 414 yards, 2 touchdown passes. Had the game winner with 16 seconds left, second most in a bowl game. Yards passing in program history. Major Applewhite, 473 is the leader. Texas 2-1 against the Buckeyes in their career. Matchup, two of the best defenses in the nation. Ohio State gives up 12 points a game. Texas gives up 14. Both teams about the same yards. 47 sacks Ohio State, 44 sacks Texas. Texas will be making its 23rd Cotton Bowl appearance. The Longhorns have 11 wins in this game. Kind of a home game for them at the Cotton Bowl Classic. Ohio State, who has the biggest alumni group in the country, I'm imagining they will be well represented at this game. So don't think, hey, this is not fair that Texas gets to play in Texas. Ohio State should have a huge – one thing about these bowl games I don't like, how do these people travel to these games every week?
It costs a lot of money.
It's a lot of, if you want to go to every one of these games, you've got to not only pay for the ticket, you got to travel to go to the game. Like Penn State played a home game in the first week. And then the second week they played where? Against Boise. Where was that game?
Fiesta Bowl.
So they had to go to the Fiesta Bowl, Arizona. Then they had to go to Miami. If they would have won last night, that's a lot. It's a lot of traveling. I think they got to think about doing these on the campuses. Although, just giving teams home games. But I guess if they're filling the stadium, I get it was loud in there last night.
It was very loud last night.
So I guess they are getting people to go and pay and do it. Good for these people.
Good for them.
I mean, seriously, I was thinking about that. I said, if you're in these bowl games, you're going all the way to the national championship, you might have to play on the road 4 straight weeks. And it's not like a road game where, hey, you go to a road during the regular season, there's only like a handful of fans that go. You're filling up half the stadium potentially.
And these aren't small stadiums.
No, these are the biggest stadiums they can find. I was thinking about it. I said, man, can you imagine you got to travel to this game every single week? All right, you get the Ohio State Buckeyes, 1-7-1 against top 5 SEC schools. It will be Ohio State's 4th Cotton Bowl appearance, and they will be the first team to play in consecutive Cotton Bowls since Michigan State did. They played there last year. Will Howard is the guy to watch. He's the quarterback, an 87 total QBR this season, second best in FBS. He trails just Cam Ward. His main target, Jeremiah Smith. We talked about him last night. 14 receiving touchdowns, a freshman. There's a good possibility if he was available and eligible for the draft that he'd be a top 5 pick in this year's draft. Watch him tonight. I'll give you my play on this one later on tonight. I hit the one last night, the over and the score. I got a good feeling on Texas, Ohio State. Stick around for my Bet365 play of the day a little bit later on in the game. When we come back, the latest news and notes. Why was Devontae Smith not at practice today? John McMullen joins me next. 3 o'clock, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe, watch the show live. Listen on the radio at 97.3 ESPN. Download the free mobile app on your phone, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City, and take us wherever you go. John McMullen is host of Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. He joins me now on the Sports Bash Live. He's brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. Stop in and take advantage of game-changing savings all month long at Boardwalk Honda. Well, Johnny Mac, we're here to Friday. It was a question about Jalen Hurts all week. He's back on the field. Now, Devontae Smith was a DNP. He is expected to play, and I think we'd all be surprised, but back tightness is the reason. Does that lead a little concern, or are they just being completely extra cautious?
I think they're being cautious with Devontae. You never know with backs, though. That's the thing.
Yes.
But, yeah, he also famously doesn't like the cold. It's been really cold out there on Wednesday and Thursday. A little bit better today, but hopefully it's not too serious with Devontae. Yeah, I'm more concerned about AJ, and he just talked, but, he's dealing with something.
No, take us through that then, because I did hear him at his locker and said we're all, at this time of the season, but I got to be out there. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like he's thinking about not playing, but are you concerned that he might not be A.J. Brown?
Yeah, exactly. And he's going to play. Not concerned about that, but what effectiveness. And when you're out there for 5-10 minutes on Wednesday and you don't practice on Thursday, that's. And remember, they took off the week prior, the key contributors, including A.J. Brown. So that's not a great sign. He brought up last year and how disappointed he was to not be able to be out there for the playoff game. So, there's a lot of – he's certainly not 100%. So
what do we think the issue? What do we think the issue with A.J. might be?
Well, it's a knee injury. He's been dealing with it for a while. And you would think that the extra week, taking off week 18 would have helped, but it doesn't seem to have helped that much. So, again, you just got to kind of see where he is. Now, he's been dealing with this for a while, and when he had been out there previously was still effective. So hopefully that's the case. But, you got to wait and see. It's a wait and see thing. You mentioned everybody's banged up. That's true. I mean, Jordan Love's banged up for Green Bay. He's going to play. A lot of players are banged up this time of year. And we'll see how effective he can be.
Yeah, Brown and Smith. Brown did not practice Thursday. Smith not today. Hurts has been kind of MIA for the last little while here. I guess, Sirianni said, look, they've been throwing to each other all year long, but that has to be thought of. This team starts slow to begin with, and getting on the same page early in this game, that might be one of the biggest factors in this game.
Yeah, I mean, and they had started to correct that. They had a good start against Pittsburgh. They had a good start in Washington before Jalen Hurts got his concussion. So they had started to kind of fix that issue. And now maybe you get knocked back to square one. But, if you have a less than 100% A.J. Brown and a less than 100% Devontae Smith, you would think it would be time to lean on Saquon Barkley. And when you do that, the unintended consequence of that is that, leaning on the running game probably makes it a little more difficult to get into a rhythm of the passing game, which I've talked about. I think it's ironic because that's happened to both of these teams. That's how Green Bay plays as well. And I think Jordan Love hasn't had the season that people expected him to have out in Green Bay.
Yeah, and the Love thing is kind of one of the reasons why you look back at the Eagles' decision to not play guys, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Even if you make it through the game healthy enough to play the next week, you might not be 100% for that game, right? I mean, so you got Jordan Love playing in that game. He hits his elbow, and then they pull him out of the game. They didn't end up winning the game anyway. You go back to that game and say, what were they even thinking about playing some of their guys? He gets banged up, and then they lose Watson.
Yeah, and there's nothing. I mean, you can't legislate injury, so I always say that. So I'm not, they had something to play for. And if the Eagles had something to play for, whether it's potentially going up in seed, they would have played their guys in Week 18 as well. They only made that decision because they were locked in. So if there was a chance they could have gotten the number one seed, they would have played everybody. And, maybe guys get hurt. Maybe they get hurt in the playoff game. Mm-hmm. But that's football. You got to go out there and play. Unless, and I think the Eagles made the right decision, unless there's nowhere to go. They were locked into the number 2 seed. So, as Nick Sirianni described it, they created their own bye week as best as possible when it came to the key contributors.
Well, they are healthy. The first time they played, Cooper DeJean was not healthy. Tell me in your mind how he changes the dynamics. Green Bay, Reed had a big game, I think 170 yards. He had a big touchdown in that game. How does getting Cooper DeJean back maybe change that matchup?
Oh, I think a lot. People thought the All-Pro team came out today, and people are talking about snubs. I know there's a viral thing going around with Lane Johnson. He was second team, not first team. I think the biggest snub of all was Cooper DeJean. I think he's the best slot corner in football. He finished third in the voting, so he didn't make the first or second team. Then he'll go down to the third team. I think he's been the best slot cornerback in football. I voted for him. I have a vote this year. I voted for him first team All-Pro.
Wow.
He lost out to Marlon Humphrey and Derwin James, and that was my problem. Derwin James is a great player. I wanted to put him at safety, but because of his snap counts, he played more in the slot than he played at safety. But I argued, well, he also plays pseudo linebacker, so he plays, if you add in his safety and box stats, he played more at safety. So, it's just one of those things where he got caught in the muck with Derwin James. He's a heck of a player. It should have been an All-Pro at safety in my mind. But, I think as the best pure slot cornerback in football this year was Cooper DeJean. So, they didn't have him. They weren't playing him week 1. They will play him this week, and they'll be better. But, Green Bay's evolved as well. They've gotten better, especially defensively. So, these two teams have changed a lot from that week 1 game.
Well, and not only, does he, is he good in coverage, and he's in that secondary. I think the communication, that's another big factor. They communicate well. They know each other well. He helps in the run game. He's a very good tackler. You had him and Bond. You and I going back to that first game, we're laughing about, is this guy an All-Pro? Well, he was an All-Pro. One of the reasons why he had 15 tackles and 2 sacks in that game. You have Cooper and him together. Those guys tackle that first night. Josh Jacobs had, 85 yards. He averaged like 5 yards a carry, but I think getting Cooper helps against the run as well.
Yeah, and he's a good run blitzer. That's something Vic likes to do. From the slot. So, he's been a great story. Should be not going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, but he should be top 5 along with Quinyon Mitchell. So it is a great, great top of the draft from the early returns from Howie Roseman when you're able to get Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So, I always talk about the story. The biggest story, and it gets overshadowed because of the splashiness of Saquon Barkley. But the far bigger story is this defense turning from one of the worst in the league to arguably the best in 1 year. And Vic Fangio deserves a lot of credit for that. But, as Vic said himself, the players are out there. They're the ones doing it. And, guys like Zach coming in, rookies like Quignon and Cooper, they've really hit the ground running. And it's been pretty impressive to watch.
Yeah, you talk about Vic says it's the players, they do it, but it's obvious that he has had a big impact in the tweaks he's made, the changes he's made. And we look back to last year's disaster in the playoffs against Tampa Bay, the last year disaster, the last 6 weeks of the season. I think it's pretty evident looking back at that whole mess that they identified that their coordinators were not strong enough last year, because that change has obviously changed a lot for both sides of the ball.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they're eerily similar. They were eighth ranked in offense last year. They're eighth this year. So, but they've done it differently with a better running game. You can make an argument they were actually more balanced last year as far as run and pass. Defensively, though, it's night and day. I always say in this advanced world, you and I and any of your listeners can go online right now and search and find all of Vic Fangio's schemes and things that he does and try to copy them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people misunderstand. It's not the scheme, it's the teaching of the scheme. You have to teach the people to understand what you want to accomplish. And that's where Vic kind of sets himself apart from Sean Desai and everybody else who tries to run what he runs. You got to teach it. You got to make sure the players are prepared to do it. And that's what sets him apart. But,
yeah, one thing
offensively, he can make an argument. They were Brian Johnson, I believe, was scapegoated. They were just as good last year offensively.
Well, everybody got tied into that last 7 weeks for whatever happened there. It just was, everybody was a part of that, and you're just trying to figure out what happened. No one really had an answer, but it seemed that these changes, at least on defense, big-time difference between Patricia and Desai and what has gone on this year. One guy on defense, Josh Sweat. Jordan Love, tough to sack. 14 sacks in 472 dropbacks. Ironically, he got hurt in the game against Philadelphia. But this is a tough guy to get down to the ground and get some pressure on here. It's the lowest rate in the league. Is that something that might be the difference in this game?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily about sacks, because he's a guy who's not going to take a lot of sacks. As you mentioned, he's a big, strong, powerful guy, too, so he's tough to bring down. I think it's about pressure. I think it's about speeding him up, getting him off his spots quickly. I think it's a big Jalen Carter game, immediate pressure up the middle, which is difficult for any quarterback. And that's kind of the weakness of the Green Bay offensive line, would be the center and right up the middle. So, if the Eagles can take advantage of that, you might not necessarily get the sack, but I always point to the NFC Championship game and, after the 2022 season. The biggest play in that game was Chris Long in the pressure that created the pick six interception. So a lot of good things can happen with pressure. You might not get the sack, but a lot of good things can happen. And as long as you speed it up, because Chris is the one who also says, if you're playing Tom Brady, you're not getting a lot of sacks.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you can still affect the game. And I think people get too caught up in that sack number.
Yeah, and the pressure is a big thing. Like, rushing, getting the ball out. We know last time the Eagles played Green Bay, they turned the ball over 3 times and still won the game. That's one thing that Green Bay does do. They force turnovers here. So it's hard-pressed to beat the same team twice, turn the ball over 3 times against them both times. So that would be something that would, you're looking up back and say, how come the Eagles lost this game? Well, it was similar to the first game. If you turn the ball over 3 times, I would imagine if they turn the ball over 3 times this time, they probably lose.
Yeah, probably. And if you think about it, and both of these teams have been eerily similar offensively. and they both thought they were turning it over too much early in the season and really scaled back to protect the football. And both have done that very well. So, maybe to the detriment of the passing offense on both sides, got maybe you could argue a little bit too cautious in that aspect of the game. And that's a tough tightrope to walk.
Mm-hmm.
But, from the Eagles' standpoint, it's not a problem because they've won pretty consistently, 14 wins. For the Green Bay standpoint, there's some games they probably would have won if they pressed it a little bit more in the passing game, but they didn't. And they're trying to rely on the running game with Josh Jacobs, much like the Eagles have done with Saquon Barkley.
One thing, John, that I'm want to get your take on is, Hurts said today, he's talking now, just moments ago, he said he's never had a concussion before. And if you've never had a concussion and you're coming back from one, you probably don't want another one. Is Green Bay going to say, hey, man, you're just coming back from that, and we're coming after you, and what that might do to Jalen Hurts? People coming back from injuries, we just assume that the mind, body, and everything is 100% right, and you just go back robotically to being a guy. But you don't know how a quarterback who's never had a concussion thinks about, I don't want another one of these things, because if I get two, now I'm in, you know what I mean? Like, if Green Bay kind of builds on that and comes after them more.
Well, I look, that's football. You try to hit guys and you try to hit guys hard.
Yeah, just when you get that first one, you're definitely more prone to that next one, right?
Yeah, there's definitely, a violence to the game that people don't like to admit to. And, you hope nobody's taking illegal shots. If it's legal, it's fine. But, it's that's one of the reasons why a lot of guys, keep injuries under wraps because they don't want to make anybody aware of what's going on. And that's why Jalen in the past, whether he's dealing with an ankle or a knee in past seasons, he would always be very, not giving up too much information because he doesn't want people twisting that ankle in the pile, twisting that knee in the pile. As far as concussions go, it's such a nebulous thing. He doesn't strike me as the guy that's going to be concerned about getting hit. But, a lot of people said that after the playoff game against Seattle with Carson Wentz when he got knocked out of that game.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because
I know Carson.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Carson called that very scary, that concussion. It can affect. These are human beings.
Well, I was going to say on that note that Jalen thanked the refs for doing the right thing and getting him out, because if you remember the game against Washington when he took the hit, he popped up and gave him a thumbs up, like, I'm good to go, I'm fine, and like here we are 2 weeks later and the guy still hasn't played. Now, one because they didn't need him to play, but 16 days no practice, and you go back to the hit, he gives the guy a thumbs up like, yo, I'm ready. And quite frankly, I don't think he wanted to go back to the locker room on that day.
No, he came out of the injury tent and tried to go back.
Right, exactly.
The second time.
Yeah.
There's, unfortunately with concussions, there's a political aspect to it too. So he's been well versed, and the league is very sensitive to some of the legal ramifications, and they don't want anybody talking out of turn when it comes to concussions. They get prepared for stuff like that as well. But Jalen doesn't strike me as somebody who's going to shy away from hits or anything of that nature.
All right, John, first game, it was Saquon Barkley. He has kind of dominated the Packers. Who has a bigger game, the running back Barkley or one of the wide receivers?
Well, right now, since both wide receivers are at less than 100%, I'm going to go with the running back, who probably is also less than 100%, but he doesn't talk about it at all. Everybody's less than 100% at this time of year. But, there's no obvious issues with Saquon Barkley. whereas AJ's dealing with something somewhat significant. And like I said, anytime you're dealing with back tightness or anything like that, that could be a concern, especially in colder weather, which is one of the reasons. It's going to be a little bit nicer on Sunday, at least for the advanced forecast, but still going to be, high 30s.
His rushing prop is 99.5 yards and 119 scrimmage yards. So sounds like Vegas looks for a big.
That.
Yeah, over the number there. A.J. Brown, by the way, his prop this week is 79.5.
Yeah, I'm going under that. I'm a little concerned about what's going on with A.J. Brown.
All right, well, it looks like a big Saquon day. By the way, hey, there's only 4 games left. If you got 23 carries, now you can pump it up to like 30. What's the difference, right? It's now or never.
Well, they went to 31, I think, to get over 2,000 in that Cowboys game.
Yep.
And, that's one of the reasons. Obviously, in hindsight, I can tell you now that that was the goal, to get to 2,000 yards in 16 games, and they would have played them in Week 18 again if there was a chance to get the number 1 seed. But once there wasn't, it was they weren't going to play them. And they didn't want to run them 31 times to get to 2,000. But that was sort of the give and take of trying to get to that number. Yeah. But yeah, they didn't want to do that, so it was good to have the week off.
All right, John McMullen, by the way, last on this, they lost last year in the playoffs. They got embarrassed in that game against Tampa Bay. They were not competitive at all. Jordan Mailata says, hunger, chip on our shoulder. We've got a lot of hunger in this locker room. And I guess, you don't look at this team as like an underdog feel or anything like that. But you've been around this team all week. Is it a very business-like atmosphere, knowing that they got embarrassed in that playoff game last year?
Yeah, I think they've turned the page on that. Maybe some of the guys that were there for it. But I remember talking to Jordan last year going into that game. He was very confident going into that Tampa Bay game. So I don't know how much you can take from that. But, I mean, there's so many new faces every year in the NFL. That's what, if you ask Nick that, he would say, well, what does that game mean to Zach Ball? And what does that game mean to Cooper DeJean, guys we're talking about? What does that mean to Quinyon Mitchell? They weren't even here. In a case of somebody like AJ didn't play in the game, Reed didn't play in the game. So much changes in the NFL. I don't think it's that impactful on this group right now.
All right, John McMullen, I'll get your take and pick on the game, who wins, why. Mike McGarry gave us a score that I was pretty surprised by. I won't tell you what that is yet. I want to hear what yours is and see where it kind of matches up with his.
I think the Eagles are going to win the game, but it's going to be close. I think there's going to be some nervous moments in the fourth quarter. I think Green Bay is a good team. I got Eagles 27-23. Maybe Jordan Love has the ball in his hands with a chance to win it. And I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson comes up with a big pick to end the game for the Eagles, 27-23.
The grown-up version of C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He says, I need to grow up. I know how important I am to them. By the way, Mike McGarry had 35-21 Philadelphia. He says, this is a Super Bowl or bust for this Eagles team. John McMullen, 27-23 Philadelphia. You can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Johnny Mack, everybody here on the Sports Bash. And I'll be making – by the way, do you know you have all these viewers of Birds 365 in Thailand? I had another guy in Thailand today watch me on your show, giving me all the lowdown on where I can watch the games in Thailand. There's like a whole Eagles bar over there.
Yeah, there's Eagles bars all over the place. I was when I was on the road, I can tell you, everywhere I went, people would come to say hello, because so many Eagles fans are either traveling or living in different cities across the country. But Phoenix, you wouldn't even believe.
Yeah, no,
Phoenix, I couldn't get away from people.
well, I don't know. This guy was in like Chiang Mai, so I don't think I'm going to meet the guy or see the guy, but he did assure me I could watch the game. He was the second. I got an email from a guy who was a LaSalle grad. I got another guy who's moved over there, and he said they get up and watch every Eagles game over there. So looking forward to that. I feel better that I can at least watch it. Just the time of these games is not going to be all that good. But I will be on with John.
It was 3 in the morning?
Nah,
3 in the morning?
3 in the morning for the NFC Championship game, and if they play in the divisional round on Sunday, the early game, it will be 3 o'clock in the morning in that one. I'm hoping for Saturday at 8 o'clock would be very nice. That would give me 8 in the morning.
At least you know.
Yeah.
And you know.
All right, Johnny Mac, I'll be on John McMullen's.
Eagles Bar.
Yes, I'll be on Birds 365 Monday morning at 8:20. And that will be my final appearance for a little while on his show, and then we'll be back here on the Sports Bash. All right, John, thanks, bud.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, no postmortem, hopefully. I would hate to have to come in here on Monday and have to recap the season and the offseason. But when we come back, the stats that you need to know for the Eagles and Packers, we're going to be talking to Paul Hembo. Hembo will join us next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 331 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. This hour is brought to you by our friends at Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Your trusted source for plumbing, heating, service, and installation for generations. 390-3907 online, broadlees.net. Coming up tonight at 5 o'clock, Sal Paolantonio is back for another Sal Pal Friday. He'll give us his thoughts on the game. But right now, all the stats and facts you need to know for the game. Paul Hembo, affectionately known as Hembo. You often hear him filling in on Greeny here on 97.3 ESPN. We miss him this week. We certainly do. So since we missed him so much, we just brought him on our show. Hembo, how are you?
I'm doing great, buddy. I'll be back in that saddle on Monday, and you'll be tired of me by Tuesday. That I can assure you.
Believe me, we yearn for you to be back in that slot, and we're looking forward to you being back there. But, Hembo, the Eagles are back in the playoffs. Last year was a disaster, so let's start there. Is there any thought in your mind, the way the season ended last year in Tampa, will come back this Sunday against a different Bay, the Green Bay, not the Tampa Bay? Any thought that this team just doesn't show up in this game on Sunday?
I don't think that this team is not going to show up on Sunday. To see a replication of their debacle in Tampa from a year ago would genuinely surprise me. That being said, the combination of a few factors, I would say, have me, we'll call it mildly concerned. Factor number one is obvious. It is the health of both Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. It will have been quite a while, of course, since Jalen Hurts started and finished an NFL game. So we could certainly argue or make the case that rust could be a factor. And his number one target on the outside, A.J. Brown, is also nursing an injury. We saw that be an issue that manifested a year ago in Tampa, like you mentioned. And we'll see. Hopefully he is something approximating himself in that game against Green Bay. But if he's not, that could obviously be a factor that looms large considering the amount of resources that Green Bay will naturally use to attack Saquon Barkley to ensure he doesn't beat them by himself. So it's obviously a factor. And the second factor is the fact that the number is just not quite as big as I would like. The number is 5.5 right now, but it has lived a lot closer to 4.5, as you well know, throughout most of the week. And the hypothetical line before this was the actual matchup that we knew would be the case was actually Packers +3. Now, that was probably a little bit sort of built in, you might say, that Jalen Hurts' status at that time was unknown. All this to say, the Packers are a team whose statistical profile, for lack of a better term, is favored in Vegas a little bit more than it seems is favored by the national commentariat. Most everyone seems to think that the Eagles are going to win this game by something approximating a touchdown to 10 points. If you just aggregate like the averages of these, quote unquote experts that make picks on these networks and stuff, the average score I've seen is something like 27-17, and I think that's a pretty likely outcome. But would I be stunned if the Packers had a drive late in that game with a chance to win? No, I would not be stunned. And the reason I would not be stunned is because it is a team that has sort of all of the attributes, all of the makings of one that could actually come into Philadelphia and spring the upset. It is a quarterback in Jordan Love who could go nuclear, and we've seen him do it this year. It's a back in Josh Jacobs who could create a time of possession issue, and it's a secondary led by Xavier McKinney who has been very opportunistic this season.
How much of this game at all, Hembo, do you look back to week one in Brazil and factor in at all? I mean, Cooper DeJean did not play in that game. It's one huge noticeable difference. But do you take anything from that first game and look at this matchup?
I view that as mostly a non-factor, candidly. The Eagles' defense is demonstrably better now than it was then, and obviously Cooper DeJean is a big difference maker for this team. But if you look at how the Eagles' defense has performed for, we'll call it most of the season, really since the bye week. I mean, the team that the Packers saw in week one was just a shell of what we have seen for the last basically 2 months. And so I don't view there as being that much of an overlap. Let's also mention the fact that Jordan Love can't feel his thumbs for all we know, right? It's because he knocked out of that game last week against Chicago, dealing with some sort of weird stuff. And it's not obvious if he's going to be able to have the kind of touch, the kind of carry, the kind of feel on the football that we are accustomed to him having. And that's, of course, one of his greatest attributes. So to me, like what happened then is like exhibition-like. It's practically like one of these like joint practice type things. Not only was it on another continent, it was so long ago, and these teams look very different now than they do then. And more than anything, that to me is advantage Eagles, because no unit has improved more than the Eagles defense since that time.
Do we buy this Eagles defense? You just talked about they've been good, but you know how Eagle fans are, man. You have one breakdown, and then it reverts back to, see, they're not that good. They had the one breakdown in the Tampa game, and that was a weird game because they were really banged up on the offensive side of the ball, but that doesn't really answer for your defense. They had the Atlanta game where they had the breakdown late against Kirk Cousins, and then they had the Washington game where they just imploded in that fourth quarter. And those three outings, I think, have some people wondering, is this defense for real, or is it the one that we saw last year?
I favor body of work over anecdotes. There is no team in the NFL, no matter how good, for whom you could not point to a game or two or three and poke holes in their resume. You just did it very effectively. I would also add that if Xavier Legette caught a ball right into the breadbasket, the Eagles could have lost that game to Carolina, and so you could have added another example of a defensive breakdown to your list. But I'm a body of work guy because over the course of 1,000 snaps, I'm gonna trust those numbers that tell me the Eagles have genuinely an elite defense. The biggest strength of this Eagle defense, as you well know, is their ability to limit explosive plays. The Eagles limit explosive plays better than any defense in the NFL. And they're going to, I would say, feast in that area once again on Sunday, in large part because the Packers are going to be without Christian Watson, who is their explosive play savant. This team averages 1.5 fewer yards per play, a massive difference without Christian Watson on the field. Their explosive play rate literally doubles when he is on the field. So the combination of the Packers being absent Christian Watson with the Eagles' ridiculous ability to keep the football in front of them, it's going to have to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust, which is why I think Josh Jacobs is going to be such a critical piece in this game. But no, to answer your question directly, I do not view this Eagles defense as a fraud. In fact, I think you could make a cogent argument that it is going to be the best unit on the field by any team in Wild Card Weekend.
Yeah, interesting to say that, a team that has a guy in Saquon Barkley with over 2,000 yards. We'll talk with Hembo here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. You can listen to the Eagles and the Packers. 3 o'clock, our coverage begins. 4:30. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick have the call of the Eagles and the Packers. Saquon Barkley, over 2,000 yards. Obviously, the first game, that was kind of like a foreshadowing of the season. They had him bottled up, and then bang, he nailed you. But is this the game that you ride Saquon again?
I think it is. And the reason I think it is twofold. One, we obviously have 16 games in his case of proof of concept that say this guy, regardless of the number of resources that defenses devote to stopping him, can still go. And it's an offensive line that has created more than 1,400 yards before contact, which is an astronomical number. It's the largest number that we have ever tracked at ESPN Stats and Info. 1,400 yards before contact. It's a video game type number. But secondly, the Packers are very susceptible when it comes to their run defense. They're big people, for lack of a better term, to use dumb guy terms. Their big people aren't as good as the Eagles' big people. This season, I looked at EPA, expected points added, a nerdy way of saying, how good are you at something? Outside the tackles, the Packers' rush defense ranks third in the NFL. They do a good job of setting the edge. But between the tackles, the Packers' rush defense ranked 24th in the NFL. Their big people can get eaten alive. So it's the Eagles guard center guard combo and Saquon Barkley's ability to beat them up the gut, to me, is probably the single most important attribute of this game when the Eagles have the ball. If those guys are moving the line of scrimmage, inverting the line of scrimmage on those kind of power run plays, for lack of a better term, I think it's the kind of game that the Eagles are going to run the ball more than they pass it. Now, if for some reason the Green Bay Packers are able to stop that stuff and Saquon's averaging 2 or 3 yards between the tackles, that's when you start to worry, because it's all the other sort of fancier, for lack of a better term, attributes of the Eagles passing game and Eagles run game that you're not quite as confident in, especially given the fact that your quarterback hasn't played meaningfully in about a month.
Hembo, how much of this game is interesting because of what Green Bay was able to do to Dallas last year? They put up a 48 spot as the 7 seed. No one was really thinking about them as a deep playoff run team last year, and then bang, they win that game. And then they enter this year with the same Super Bowl odds essentially as Philadelphia. How much of last year's game kind of interjects itself into this particular game as a 2-7 game?
It's a good question and the right one to ask. The Packers were a 7.5-point dog in that game. They're a larger underdog in that game than they are likely to be in this one, which just puts perspective as to like how unlikely that slaughtering was. That being said, there is no comparison between this year's Eagles and last year's Cowboys. That was one of the softest good teams I've ever seen. one of the most fraudulent organizations in all of sports that regularly does that in the biggest moments because their stat profile carried only when they played bad Commanders and Giants teams. So by no means can I say that result surprised me. In fact, the fact that the Packers were capable of doing that and actually did that to the Cowboys, to me, is actually a good thing because it doesn't provide the Eagles the opportunity for this to be a trap game. Now, obviously, you're not going to ever encounter a trap game in the playoffs, but we have proof of concept from a year ago that say in a high-level playoff game, Jordan Love played out of his mind. They ran the ball effectively, and their defense took the ball away. So we have this, from 1 year ago, this really young football team playing great in this exact context. Also, again, the number is only 5.5 right now. It's been vacillating between 4 and 5.5, and so the odds makers don't view this as a game for which the Eagles are likely to blow out their opponent. All this to say, by no means should the Eagles be sleeping on a Packers team that performed so well in the wild card game last year in Dallas.
That said, if Philadelphia somehow was not able to win this game, is it fair that the talk on Monday is about Nick Sirianni?
I suppose it's fair, but I think that's also very likely to be driven by dumb guy commentary, to be honest with you. Nick Sirianni has won 70% of his regular season games, as you well know. To me, I think that's more of a Howie Roseman stat than it is a Nick Sirianni stat. But I don't think you could construct a credible argument that firing Nick Sirianni after the season that the Eagles have just had, unless the kind of meltdown that he has against the Packers is cataclysmic. For example, a variety of bad third and fourth down decisions, a variety of sloppy challenges, the kinds of coaching malpractice that you'll sort of know it when you see it, to use the Supreme Court's dictionary definition of pornography. I happen to think that Nick Sirianni is a tier 2.5 coach who, generally speaking, does a nice job of, sort of inspiring the guys, win one for the Gipper, and isn't exactly Paul Brown on the X's and O sheet. That's what I think of Nick Sirianni. But that's been plenty good enough throughout his tenure to enjoy high-level success. But if the Eagles do lose on Sunday to the Packers, the vultures are going to circle because it's going to be one and done 3 out of 4 times. And the 1 year they were not one and done, it's when he had an all-star group of coordinators. And, Shane Steichen was so good with Jalen Hurts that season. And I think that you'll probably hear a lot of those same naysayers, for lack of a better term, all off season long. But I would say that there's a non-zero chance he's fired, but it's by no means a meaningful one. The Eagles, if they wanted to fire him, would have done so a year ago and hired Belichick or Vrabel.
Yeah, I agree with that, by the way. I am not in the camp of moving on from Sirianni, even if they lose this game. Obviously, the questions about what he does, as you kind of mentioned, in this world, the football world has shifted from I have to do everything to the CEO coach. How many CEO coaches in the playoffs now, they don't call plays. They just kind of oversee. They set the culture. They set the message. And whatever that he's doing, he seems to be doing it right. Now, if they lose this game, highly disappointing because it kind of has that feel of this team right now. It's their time because moving forward, you get another 2,000-yard season out of Saquon Barkley. How many more years are you going to get where this team's playing at such? Even though they're young and they got a lot of players, the schedule next year is absolutely brutal. This feels like the perfect opportunity for this crew here. And when you take a look at this game against Green Bay, it's probably, Hembo, the best first-round matchup to get off after not playing last week against the Giants.
I think that you're probably that I expect the Eagles to seize. I'm picking them to come out of the NFC and face Baltimore in the Super Bowl. The Eagles have the best team. All right, the Eagles have the best team. The Eagles have the most different ways to beat you. The Eagles have the fewest excuses not to win. The reason I feel so confident in the Eagles is because I genuinely am confident that they can beat most teams in the NFC playoff field if the score is 17-13 or if the score is 31-28. That's the kind of multiplicity that is required in the playoffs. The question is not like how good is your good. The question is how good is your bad. What happens if you have to play left-handed? What if they're hitting your fastball and you have to use your off-speed pitches? Those are the if-then propositions that are required to win in the playoffs, and the Eagles answer a lot of those affirmatively. Jalen Hurts was so much better this year against the blitz and has weapons on the outside that he trusts with a great connection. Saquon Barkley has rushed for 2,000 yards in the year of our Lord 2024. It is unheard of. But most importantly, Vic Fangio has a defense that is as good a unit as I've seen the Eagles have since Jim Johnson, God rest his soul, was coaching them, and those are some of my favorite units of all time. This Eagles defense, ultimately, to me, is going to be the biggest reason why this team either thrives or fails in the playoffs. If Vic Fangio's unit plays the way I think they are capable, this is literally carry your team to the Super Bowl defense. I genuinely think they're that good. I'm hyping them up that much. It's a better unit than the offense, which, by the way, is a top 10 unit. But ultimately, it will wind up coming down to how many high-level plays Jalen Hurts can make. Because you can't win a Super Bowl in today's climate running the football 3 yards in a cloud of dust and trusting your defense. He's going to have to make one throw a quarter that is going to be required. I expect he can, but I obviously want to see what he looks like early against Green Bay, given the fact that he's likely to be pretty rusty.
All right, Hembo will be back on Monday at 10 a.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN on Greeny, and you can hear the reaction to the Eagles and Packers, and we'll have more coverage throughout the day right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We are looking forward to you returning to the airwaves, Hembo. Appreciate it.
Go Birds.
All right, take care, man. Go Birds is right, and he brought up an interesting point about when you're not at your best, if you have to do something different, can you play left-handed? Can you, if you're not, fastball's not working, can I throw a curve? That's where I think the Eagles excel. If other teams try to take something away from Philadelphia, okay, you're going to try to take Barkley away, we'll throw it to Devontae Smith. You want to take Smith away, we'll throw it to Brown. All of those things play a factor in the game on Sunday. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. We thank Hembo for jumping on, and he is brought to you this hour by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing service, and installation. Call 609-390-3907 online at broadlees.net. Coming up at 4 o'clock today, Adam Caplan has today's Football at 4. All right, time now for my Friday Five, brought to you by BMW of Atlantic City. Your luxury BMW experience is closer than you think. Take advantage of exceptional savings and experience luxury today. BMW Atlantic City in Egg Harbor Township. So for my Friday Five this week, there's only 5 games, but I'm going to rank the games in terms of interest for me. All right, ready to go?
Let's do this.
Number 5, Chargers, Houston. I don't think either team has a chance to win the Super Bowl, so I don't care who wins.
Wow, you just dismissed them out of hand.
Big time. That game, insignificant to me. In fact, at 4 o'clock, I think I might do some gardening.
You garden?
Nope, but that's what I'd rather do than watch that ridiculous game at 4. No, I mean, it's just a game that I don't think either team can win the Super Bowl. Number 4, Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Pittsburgh just smells like a pair of athletic sweat socks. I'm out on them. I think Baltimore can win a Super Bowl, though. So, intrigue there a little bit more than the game earlier in the day. Number 3, Minnesota and the Rams. Now, you just had a little info on the tickets for that game.
So they had a 2-hour window open for just Rams and Cardinals season ticket holders. They sold 52,000 tickets in a 2-hour
I'm happy to hear
window.
that. I'm glad because I was a little concerned. Like, are Rams fans really going to make, what's going to happen there? I know there's a lot bigger things of importance, but I am happy that there's going to be people in that building and who knows what the atmosphere will be like, but I think that's pretty cool. Number 2, Denver, Buffalo. I think Buffalo can win a Super Bowl, but I think Denver can upset them. I think this is the sneakiest game of the week, that nobody really knows enough about Denver, and they just all think Buffalo. Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo all year long. Could Denver be the upset of the weekend? And number 1 in my Friday Five, it's Tampa and Washington. I think it's the most interesting game of the weekend by far. Either team can win. I think Tampa's dangerous. I think Washington, no one wants to get stuck playing Jaden Daniels. So that's, to me, my number 1 game in this weekend's Friday Five.
And when the Eagles win on Sunday, that's the game everyone's going to want to watch to know who they play in the next round.
Well, I'll tell you the possibilities of how Philadelphia could play anybody but Washington. They cannot play Washington. The most likely scenario in the divisional round, if Philadelphia wins, is Philadelphia against Tampa Bay. There are multiple scenarios that they could play Tampa. They could also play the Rams. They could also play the Vikings. I'll tell you how coming up next hour on the Sports Bash, plus Sal Paolantonio tonight at 5 o'clock here on the Sports Bash. Coming up next, it is Football at 4 with Adam Caplan. Plus, don't forget, One Thought every game at 5:30 with Casey Joyner. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. This game's not ordinary. It's a 2-7 matchup by numbers, but two good teams, Philadelphia and Green Bay, both had Super Bowl aspirations at the start of the season. But who persevered? The injury report is out, and really no surprises for Philadelphia. Just one name on that list that you can kind of say, okay, DNP today was Devontae Smith, but he should play in the game. A.J. Brown was back at practice today, and everybody else. Adam Caplan is here. Never hurt. Adam Caplan is back for the second day in a row on a Football at 4 Friday. What's up, Adam?
Yeah, good to talk to you, Mike. So as a tradition on Football at 4 with Caplan and Gill, the Eagles injury report comes out at 3:59. So now I want to talk about Devontae Smith, and we're going to get to A.J. Brown because there's been developments over the last couple hours. Because he actually spoke to the media. Very interesting. I did just listen to it. But with Devontae Smith, he's actually been on and off the injury report for 3 weeks with his back issue. He did not work today. And Friday, by the way, is always the lightest day of the week for practice of the 3 when you play Sunday. So, yeah, he's clear to play. It's just something to watch. He had the wrist injury, the right wrist injury. That's off the injury report. But the big one is A.J. Brown. So what happened is he clarified what happened Wednesday. So he wasn't supposed to work Wednesday at the link, and he came over with the team, and he left. So he never actually went up practicing. Thursday, as you know, Mike, he was held out. He's got this left knee issue, which it first came up when he got tackled awkwardly late in that Pittsburgh game when they were trying to pass the game to put the game away. And then he felt a tweak in it that Thursday practice leading up to the next game, which I believe was against Washington. Still played, still scored. And then he took all the normal reps that he would take on a Friday practice, which is generally under an hour, and they don't practice a lot on Friday. So this is something, and I listened to his press conference, Mike. I mean, it doesn't sound very good. He made it clear he's playing. We don't know exactly what it is, whether it's a sprained knee. We just don't know what it is, but obviously playing on it doesn't make it better, clearly, because he's still dealing with whatever it is. So that's something we're going to watch on Sunday, Mike. How good does he look against the Packers?
Yeah, I know A.J. Brown, he said it, as you mentioned, hey, we're all banged up at this stage of the season. And then Smith, the one thing with Smith is a back. You never know with a back. You can feel great one day, and then you wake up, you're locked up, and you can barely move. I mean, the back thing is a little something there. But, hey,
for sure.
We'll hope that he wakes up on Sunday on the right side of the bed and everybody's ready to go. But the injury report looks pretty good for Philadelphia. Green Bay, by the way, their injury report, I haven't seen that one yet, but Christian Watson, we know, is out. Jordan Love was at practice. He's been a little sore, but most likely will go in the game. That's a big one for them. When you talk about the Eagles, you look at their offensive side of the ball. Let's go to the matchups. Adam Caplan, and get your take. Eagles offense against the Packers defense. They scored 34 points the first time they played. So what are some of the keys for offense against the Packers defense?
I teased this yesterday. So now I do want to say that knowing that A.J. Brown's knee issue is far worse than we anticipated, and with Devontae Smith's back injury, see, we don't know with the back, is it, okay, you just talked about, is it something that he woke up with? Well, most likely it came out of a game. If with contact, will it aggravate it? We don't know that. So typically the way you beat the Packers, just like the Lions did and the Vikings did, is you throw the football. Okay, that's the clear blueprint, is you throw the football. Now, the Packers might go third against the run in the National Football League, 4 yards a carry. That's actually really good in today's NFL. They have an excellent defensive line rotation. They're really good at inside backer. They're good. Their front is good. They're good at safety. They're not very good at corner. They're below average. But the question is, and the Eagles should be able to protect. I don't worry about that. And the weather's is clearing up. It's going to be mid to high 30s. The wind, which has been terrible this week, should be fine on Sunday, less than 10 miles an hour. That's throwing weather, but I'm just a little concerned with. I don't know what A.J. Brown can and can't do. And with Devontae Smith's situation. Now, Dallas Goedert's back. He looked great last week. We talked about that. He got knocked around for a quarter. They got him out. So they're going to be available. You just don't know how effective they're going to be, but you got to throw the football. I mean, you just have to. Now, that first game in Brazil, they did a good job. Jalen Hurts was terrific in that game. Yes, he turned it over a little bit, but he also had several outstanding throws in that game. Barkley wasn't great in terms of running the football in that game, but You know their offense starts with Barkley. Now but there's a caveat, Mike. Before we move on here, the last game that Jalen started from beginning to end, where he finished against the Steelers, the Eagles actually came out throwing. In fact, the 5 out of the first 6 plays were called passes. He was outstanding in that game. I get that Hurts, has missed 2.5 weeks. I get that, but he's healthy. He's been cleared. They got to throw the ball here. They just can't come in with this passive attitude. The one thing the teams have shown you could throw against the Packers.
Yeah, they threw against the Packers in the first game, 67-yard touchdown pass to A.J. Brown. They also had 132 total yards from Saquon Barkley in the game, so Philadelphia has a couple things going for them. They're very beatable, the Packers defense is. They do have a deep defensive line rotation. We'll see how that factors in here because the Eagles' offensive line, we always say, you might be good at pass rush, but you always feel good about the Eagles' offensive line holding up regardless, right? I mean, that's one area. If you have a good pass rush, you feel like Philadelphia can neutralize that.
No question. Now, see, if you look at the numbers of the Packers secondary, they're certainly better than the talent would lead you to believe. Because Jair Alexander, who hasn't played in nearly 2 months, he's done, most likely for the playoffs. He just had knee surgery. And Keyshawn Nixon has been either their second or third corner. He's definitely starting. He's their kick and punt returner. Mostly does kickoffs. And then Carrington Valentine, who was a 7th rounder last year, he's been starting for Alexander. Teams will go after Valentine. That's the guy the Eagles will look to target. There's no question about it. When you talk to teams, Mike, every week, they'll tell you typically that it's rare to have 2 elite corners. There's someone you're going to target. And Carrington Valentine's that guy that Kellen Moore will target in this game.
Yeah, they got all problems in their safety position, too. They've had some injuries back there, so we'll see who even lines up at safety for the Green Bay Packers. Let's look at the Packers offense because much like Philadelphia, they got some weapons on the outside. They got a running back, and they got a quarterback who's an aggressive thrower of the football. And look, they protect him. Only 14 sacks this year of Jordan Love.
It's surprising because, Mike, if you look at their offensive line, you go, wow, this is a no-name line. Walker's a left tackle, was a 7th rounder in the past. He's an okay player, but doesn't give up a lot of pressures. Zach Thomas come out of nowhere, number 50. Who had been a backup prior to this season. He's done a really good job. I'll tell you what, they're really well coached by Luke Butkus, who's a nephew of the late Dick Butkus. They just do they do a really good job as a cohesive unit, but that doesn't mean the Eagles can't win. Mike, and look, what's ironic, 2 of the teams on the bottom 5 of Blitz Rate are playing against each other. It's just kind of comical. Usually you don't see that. Now, the defense that the Packers run is a 43 front. They changed it. Now offensively, it's very much like Kyle Shanahan, a lot of outside zone. They're a very patient offense. Now, of course, without Christian Watson, as you mentioned, Mike, he's their shot play receiver. The guy you're going to see is Dontavian Wicks, who's a 2nd rounder, was a 5th rounder last year. He was a 2nd-year player, 5th rounder last year out of UVA. He can run. He's not the blazer that Watson is, but he can run. You're going to see him. He's a big guy. But there are a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, 1 back. You mentioned Josh Jacobs. The offense starts with Josh Jacobs because Matt LaFleur, like Kyle Shanahan, and the 2, by the way, coached in Washington with the Commanders, he believes in balance. So he sometimes where you go, wow, why don't you throw the football? He wants to run it. That always plays into the offensive hands, but you got to watch out for play action. They're a big play action team and a big motion team, just like Kyle Shanahan. So that's what's coming, Mike, with this offense. They're deep at tight end. They got Luke Musgrave back over the last 2 weeks. He's the athletic part of that 2 tight end offense they have with Tucker Kraft, who's number 85. You mentioned Jordan Love, Mike, super aggressive thrower. Turned the ball over a ton the first half, not turning over the second half because they've been more run centric. That's helped him settle down a little bit. And the dude's a gunslinger. He'll throw it when you don't think he's going to throw it. But now again, they want his temps down. But the bottom line is they're a balanced offense, but if they let him throw it, man, he can make plays. And the guy they're going to target is Darius Slay. That's the guy that teams want to go after.
Well, I'll tell you what, Philadelphia, I'm interested in the who gets the pass rush. Is it a Jalen Carter coming up the middle? Is it Josh Sweat? We played a bite earlier in the show from John Gruden who said, Sweat got 2 holding penalties against him in the first game in that game. So can he cause a little bit of havoc, or do you get that push from up the middle? My big thing is if it's a close game late in the game, who gets to Love? Who's the guy from the Eagles that can get there? Because that really – been the question all year, right? Do they have that guy who can get the big play and maybe not get the sack, but just hurry you, and that forces the turnover?
Well, the guy who now this is the breakout come to the party game for Zach Bond. He was unbleeping believable with 11 solos in that game in week 1, 2 sacks. Because, it's funny, Mike. Coming into the season, we knew that Zach Bond would start, but we didn't know a lot about him because he had a rather nondescript training camp. Now, the Eagles would tell you, as the people we spoke to told us, didn't make a lot of mental errors. They really liked that about him. But who the heck knew, Mike? And by the way, congratulations to Zach Bond as being an All-Pro. Mike, this is one of the all-time stories, considering his role was supposed to be a backup edge rusher and special teams player. Like, nobody saw this coming. Neither did Howie Roseman because he signed him for what I just talked about. But isn't it funny that the defensive coordinator saw something different, and here we go? So on your point, Mike, I'll be interested to see what they do with Zach Bond here, because one of the things that they did is, because of Josh Jacobs, they moved him into the box a little bit. Not quite like they did against New Orleans, where they were going to take away the toss play to Alvin Kamara. And then, look, you have guys like Nakobe Dean who are very important, who had a couple really nice plays in that first game, and he's been excellent against the run for the most part. So, look, they're a team that wants to be balanced. It's going to start with Josh Jacobs. I don't worry about Josh Jacobs. Mike, don't forget the Eagles, who had a shaky run defense for the first 5 or 6 weeks. They've turned it around, so I don't worry about that. I'm more worried about can they get pressure on Jordan Love, because you don't want this guy to carve you up.
Yeah, that's the case. And who gets that? Where's the weak spot in the line for the Packers where you feel, this is where you talk about Jalen Carter, all pros.
Yeah.
This is where you got to be an all pro. These are the games right here.
Yeah, and Mike, look, Sean Ryan's a first-year starter who was rotating last year with John Runyon Jr. Elton Jenkins is a guy who's played left tackle, has had a lot of injuries, now playing left guard. Rasheed Walker has been a good story development. He's not a great player. Zach Tom has been a big I mentioned him. I don't know if there's that one spot. It's just guys got to win their individual matchups. It's, again, because, Mike, they don't blitz, really. They're aggressive in their zones. The Eagles are very disciplined, and that's why that this defense, Mike, is so good, because, everybody talks about bend and don't break. Well, they're not really bending like people thought they would this season.
No, and the one guy who didn't play the first time, as we know, is Cooper DeJean, and that was a big spot in the game where Jaden Reed, he beat up on Avonte Maddox in that game. Not as easy this time around.
Oh, by the way, I do want to mention that. Okay, speaking of that, Isaiah Rodgers, because of his broken hand, didn't play in Week 1, who's their third outside corner. And a guy who we told you would not be part of this season, well, that was true early on. As Jalen Hunt was not in the rotation, he was their fifth edge rusher. Well, the two guys in front of him are out. He's now their third edge rusher. So you never know, Mike, with the playoffs, who could be the hero. We didn't know that Zach Bond would be the hero in Week 1. Who saw it? I mean, we certainly didn't. And then the good story, Mike, is that you mentioned DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, number 27, we have to mention. They've got a lot of experience this season in critical games. The Baltimore game was probably that game, Mike, where you go, wow, these young kids. Remember, DeJean stuck that Derrick Henry on that stick tackle, which was incredible, which made a huge meme. These guys have risen to the occasion. I expect it to happen late Sunday afternoon at the Link.
Adam Caplan, football at 4. The playoffs are here. We've gone 18 weeks of regular season football. We go all off season. We go all year for football at 4, but it's all for this moment. It's Eagles and Packers this Sunday, 4:25, actually 4:30. They push it back 5 minutes for the playoffs. It's 4:30 right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Adam, we'll talk to you, pal.
See ya.
All right, Adam Caplan, football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Live video streaming on the X platform and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and be a part of the show. We got so much for you today. We got Knicks Nuggets coming up in about 15 minutes from now. But here's a couple things to keep an eye on in the game. What I like, matchup, 1, Cooper DeJean. I like that matchup with Reed. I think that's a big change for Philadelphia from the first time they played. 2, Quinyon Mitchell. We talk about Quinyon Mitchell. Haven't talked a lot about him. It's like a game. You don't talk a lot about him. Why? No one throws his way. Well, who is he matched up with? Don't care. I like that matchup big time. Whoever Mitchell's got, I like that matchup. I like Philadelphia's secondary up against this quote-unquote really deep wide receiving core. Okay, yeah, they got a pretty deep wide receiving core. They got a lot of guys to throw to, but none of them are capable, in my mind, of having a big game against it. Yeah, against Avonte Maddox, I can identify you and go after you. And Green Bay did that in week number 1. Well, who are they going to identify? Adam has been on a couple times this week and said the guy they're going to go after is Darius Slay. He's the older guy. He's a little maybe, I don't want to say losing a step. He's had a pretty solid year this year, but you're not going after Quinyon Mitchell. I like what John McMullen said earlier in the day today. It was C.J. Gardner-Johnson stepping up and getting a pickoff, an interception in this particular game. I think that's something that could happen too. Why? I like Jalen Carter up front. I think Jalen Carter has kind of a coming out party and has a day where he disrupts and causes havoc in the middle of the field. And that's one of those things. You got to get that push from up the middle against a guy like Love. I think coming at him from the front is definitely a big-time difference maker for Philadelphia. Another matchup we like. We played the audio earlier from John Gruden. You got Josh Sweat, and he had 2 holding penalties called against him in that week 1 game. And you got to think, hey, that's a matchup that maybe favors Philadelphia up front with Josh Sweat against Rasheed Walker. Yeah, Rasheed Walker is the left tackle for the Packers. Wallace, Walker, whatever you want to call him, John Gruden, he's holding Josh Sweat, and that's a problem. Dontavion Wicks, I don't think that he's a big-time factor. Romeo Dobbs, these guys are nice players, but they are, I think, inferior in the matchup with the guy they're lined up against. You put Reed in the slot up against DeJean, I'll take him. Cooper. You got Dobbs lined up on the outside against Quinyon Mitchell, I got Mitchell. You got Dontavion Wicks up against Darius Slay. I'll take the veteran in that game there. Josh Jacobs, the running back, very talented. Like him a lot. But I really like an all-pro player in Zach Bond. I like what I see from Jalen Carter because inside there, Josh Myers, Sean Ryan, and Jenkins, the interior of that Packer line, they're okay. But I think Philadelphia has the horses up front to win those battles. You go to the defensive side of the ball, this is where I think there's a big difference in the game. And, Josh, you just sent me the Green Bay injury report. Remind me again, one of the safeties is
Evan Williams. He
out?
is listed as questionable.
Questionable for the game.
Anderson has been ruled out.
Zane Anderson is out. Evan Williams is questionable. So is Quay Walker, one of their linebackers. So they've got some guys in key spots because the secondary for them is all sorts of banged up. The safety spot is a problem for them, as John Gruden kind of noted when he was watching them play. Their safety position has been a disaster.
Yeah, it's a rotating door. And I think that, when the issue with Williams as well, to point out, Williams, Mike, is a rookie. So they're basically relying on a player who's questionable, who's a rookie, to fill the void of what Gruden explains is basically a rotating door.
Who's the safety? Doesn't matter to me. Here's the reason why. Carrington, Valentine, and Keeson Nixon are your corners, and I think the Eagles have the updated advantage in that spot there. I think Nixon and Valentine are big-time drop-offs at the corner spot. Bullard, as he talked about, how to go play some safety. He's the nickel guy. If they don't play, I don't know who the nickel would be because Nixon is kind of the other nickel back on that team. You got Eric Stokes. You don't have a lot of depth at the corner spot. I think this is the big spot and the big difference in the game is their secondary is banged up, and it's kind of the weak spot of their team. Of course, they lost Alexander.
Yeah, really quick. So Stokes coming into the year was expected to be the outside corner along with Alexander. He lost his job, and he's now stuck behind Nixon and Carrington. So if Bullard, for whatever reason, has to bump out of nickel and then Nixon goes to the nickel, you're asking a guy who is technically their fourth or fifth cornerback to come in and look across the field at A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and basically be, oh, bleep.
609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. We got a couple questions on the text board that you guys can get involved in. One, it's Happy Hour Friday. What are you having for the Eagles game on Sunday? 4:25 kick. I keep saying 4:25. It's 4:30. Don't be mad at me if you sit on the couch at 4:25 and you see Gronk talking to you.
Do you think people are really going to begrudge you 5 minutes?
Could be. Could be.
You think someone's going to text in on Sunday and be like, Mike Gill, it's 4:30. You lied to me.
No, I don't think they're going to say it like that. That sounds like a meathead. I think our listeners are smarter than you just made them out to be. You made them sound like they're not very bright.
Well, you're the one who tells them I talk over their heads sometimes.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. All right, 4:30 is the kickoff Sunday. Where will you be for the game? Going to the game? On your couch? Going out? And if you're going somewhere, let us know the best spot in the area to watch the games. I want best TV setup, sound on. Let us know. Because to me, watching an Eagles game is different than watching a Phillies game somewhere. Where's the spot to go to watch Eagles football? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Hit us up on the text board. Where are you going to watch Eagles Packers this Sunday? It's a great time to go and watch the game. You go out, watch the game. You're home by, 9 o'clock, ready to go for work on Monday. Sports Bash at 2 o'clock. We're live at the Fanatic Sportsbook on Monday's show. It'll be my last show for a while, and boy, I hope we're talking about an Eagles win. I really do. Eagles, Packers, Sunday, 4:30, right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 4:30 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe. Use the hashtag SBLive to find us. And if you subscribe, you get the alert when we go live every day, including today, Happy Hour Friday. It's time for Nick's Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw is host of the Shift podcast. You know, we're 1 month to pitchers and catchers.
It's right around the corner. Right around
the corner. And, of course, he is producer of The Locker Room with Billy Schweim on 97.3 ESPN. And Nick's Nuggets, they're brought to you on Fridays by the Piccalilli Inn. Visit them on Facebook or Piccalilli.com for their pick game specials, and be sure to pre-order to guarantee your spot in Sunday's lineup. Nobody beats the Piccalilli, Route 206 in Shamong. All right, let's bring in Nick Earnshaw for today's edition of Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash. Hey, Nick.
What's going on, Mike? Nice to talk to you again. And we have a lot to talk about today. We have some snubs we have to get into in just a second here because, I mean, they put out the All-Pro selections today, and this will be nugget number one. I was stunned at that there was only 2 first-team All-Pros from the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, there's a couple second teams, I get it. The full list is 2 first-teamers for the Eagles, which is Zach Bond, very well-deserved, and Saquon Barkley. Then you have 4 second-teamers in Jalen Carter, Jordan Mailata, A.J. Brown, and Lane Johnson. Now, the biggest snub to me had to have been Lane Johnson, and I think Lane Johnson and his teammates also thought the same thing. Now, there was a picture, multiple beat reporters posted this out on the Twitter X platform, and it was a comparison, an all-pro comparison, just a piece of paper that was printed out with a bunch of different stats like sacks allowed, QB hits, QB hurries allowed, etc., comparing Lane Johnson and Penei Sewell of the Detroit Lions, who got that first-team All-Pro nod. And according to Jeff McClain of the Inquirer, he said he did speak to Lane Johnson briefly before he left and can confirm that the sign at his locker stall indicates he wasn't happy with the All-Pro voting. That's according to the Inquirer's Jeff McClain. Mike, did Lane really get that snubbed by a big margin? I know Penei Sewell's a very good left tackle, but you look at the numbers, I mean, he has an argument.
He probably does have an argument. I mean, I don't know, because Lane Johnson's older than Penei Sewell. It's not like,
Yes.
Hey, Penei Sewell is the veteran guy, and he's kind of been the guy for all these years. But, I guess you could make an argument. I mean, he never gives up a sack. We were laughing. Josh said something to me earlier. He was like, oh, yeah, they put this thing up, and maybe it's extra motivation. I said, what extra motivation is Lane Johnson? He never gives up a sack. He never how much better can he really play in the game? So I don't know what it means other than, he probably should have got it, or you can make an argument for him. But, hey, if it makes him play better, which I doubt is even possible, then I'm all for it.
I just, did he need to put that up in his locker, or the players put that up? I understand.
I guess somebody did it for him.
Yeah, but, I mean, listen, according to McClain, he talked to Lane Johnson, and he wasn't happy about it, that he got second team and Penei Sewell got first team. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. He was much better in multiple categories. Like, he only allowed 10 pressures this year. Penei Sewell allowed 28.
I would say this, okay? I don't know this off the top of my head. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I assume that Detroit throws the ball significantly more than Philadelphia does. So to give up less pressures and sacks for Lane Johnson makes sense because they don't throw the ball, I would say, nearly. There's games where Jalen Hurts throws the ball like 14 times. So those things might come into factor when they're saying, hey, look at the numbers in terms of pressure rate. They pass the ball significantly more than Philly, and their pass pressure rates are similar.
True, but then you could also make the argument for run blocking. They had this stat located at his locker. The run block win rate was 80% for Lane Johnson, and Penei Sewell wasn't even ranked in run blocking. So I could see why Lane Johnson might be upset, because there could be a clause in his contract where he could make a little more money if he was first team. So I could see why he'd be a little frustrated at that point.
Oh, no doubt. Listen, if your contract's tied to this, of course you're a little miffed at the possibility of losing out on a couple bucks. But I can't imagine that it's going to change his day or change his game. He can't play much better. There's one thing for sure that I'm not worried about is that Lane Johnson's going to come to play through hell or high water, whether or not he wins or is named to the All-Pro team or not. The one that I'm pumped about is Zach Bond. This is a story. This is a guy who gets All-Pro, first-team All-Pro for $1.5 million. You sign a guy, you have no expectations, and he ends up becoming an All-Pro player. Now, the flip side of that is now you got to pay the guy because he's a free agent. So what kind of deal is he going to end up getting? This is going to be a tricky offseason for Philadelphia in my mind for a couple reasons. You got to figure out what to do with Zach Bond, one, and Mekhi Becton's the other one. Mekhi Becton's a guy who's a free agent. You got to figure out what you want to do with him, too. But Zach Bond, $1.5 million. What an unbelievable story.
Yeah, first team All-Pro for him. He was one of the two, Saquon being the other. If you're watching on YouTube or X, you can see that is up right now. And listen, for Zach Bond, he came out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere. And you're right, Mike. I'm curious to see what Howie Roseman does in this offseason, right? He has refused to pay linebackers in the past, right? Like TJ Edwards, Kazir White, other guys who have had really good seasons for the Eagles. I don't know if you can let Zach Bond walk. He has been that impactful for the Birds, but maybe he's playing because it's a contract year. He's getting a little bit older, hasn't really had an opportunity to be that number one type of linebacker. He took it and ran with the Eagles this year. Would you be getting the same first team All-Pro level of linebacker out of him after he gets that big contract? That's a question you have to think about as well. Maybe you find another diamond in the rough.
Yeah, well, listen, they found with TJ Edwards a couple of years ago, too, by the way. That was a undrafted rookie free agent. So I don't know if Howie Roseman is so obtuse that he thinks he could just keep finding these guys off the scrap heap, or does he finally say, I found a guy, let's stick with him?
Yeah, I would hope so, because he has been so important to this defense from going worst to first this season, and he has been mightily impactful. And, it was a very big question mark coming into the season. What was that linebacker core going to look like? How are they going to be utilized? Kobe Dean getting hurt all the time. Nobody knew Zach Bond would be this good. If he was half this good, they'd probably still be a really good defense. So they've gotten way more than expected out of Bond. He is a first-team All-Pro alongside Saquon Barkley, who got it on the offensive side, and then 4 others getting the second-team All-Pro nods. All right, let's move along to nugget number 2. I want to talk about Jalen Hurts. He finally clears concussion protocol. That comes out today, and we just have to talk about it. We've talked about the backup quarterbacks a lot over the past couple of weeks since they filled in for Jalen Hurts. But Jalen's very important to this offense. We can't mistake that, okay? And I know we have some John Gruden audio here that I want to play because he kind of breaks down how important Jalen Hurts has been to this team.
Yeah. Listen, Jalen Hurts means a lot to this team. The numbers aren't the reason. It's the intangibles. He might not be playing well, and you might be questioning him, and then it's 3rd down and 7, and he takes off, and he gets that big run. He makes it's like a silent assassin, right? He's got a silencer on the end of his weapon there. He just makes things happen. They come up at big times. There's frustration along the way. But the guy's a winner. This team, all they do is win with him. Can it be frustrating at times? Sure. But this team wins. And, here's another thing. We've talked about him not playing for a couple of weeks here because of the concussion. Remember, the best game this guy ever played, he sat out 2 weeks. That was between the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. So those 2 weeks when he sat out and came back and played was the best game he ever played. So I expect a big day from Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I do too. And listen, this is the first time he said it in his press conference that he's ever had a concussion. So I'm curious to see how they get him started and what they prepare for him, what Kellen Moore has up his sleeve. That first drive is usually very scripted. I'm curious to see what they do. I think they go right to Saquon Barkley, ease Jalen into it. And now, you have some injury issues with Devontae Smith, He's a little banged up. A.J. Brown talked about it during his press availability today. He's a little banged up. So they're going to have to lean on Jalen a little bit here and to get the ball out quickly, I think, to these receivers, especially since everyone's a little banged up. And who isn't at this point in the season? You played 17 games now. I mean, everyone is a little bit hurt. Now he comes back, has a couple of weeks off. The other players had a week off, essentially. For the most part, the most important players on the team, the high-value players, they had last week to rest. So Hurts, listen, his intangibles are so important. You're right about this, Mike. If he's able to just manage the game, let Saquon do his thing and hit A.J. Brown on these slant routes, go to Devontae Smith when he needs to. He has Dallas Goedert back, right? He's off of injury now. So you're a pretty healthy team heading into this first postseason game. They can't lose this one, especially at home when you have everybody. There's just no excuse.
Well, listen, I actually look at it from a positive here and say, look, because of this, they don't want him getting hit. They want to get the ball out of his hand quickly. Let him get some quick, short passes early in this game. Let him get A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. And by the way, last week we saw them get Dallas Goedert involved. So now they say, hey, we can work some plays in for him because we want to get quick, short stuff out. Don't get him hit. And then that should open up big plays later on in the game. It might end up being a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, and listen, he's got, those second-team All-Pro offensive linemen in front of him. Maybe some of them should have been first-team All-Pro, but we already had that discussion. Jalen has every opportunity to take this game and probably run away with it, honestly. And listen, the Packers secondary, a little banged up. I think they should literally attack that with Dallas Goedert, with A.J. Brown as much as possible. I know they're going to go to Saquon, but that secondary has trouble stopping a lot of wide receivers. And with this core, I mean, having it fully healthy, there's no reason. Jalen probably should have a pretty big day.
Yeah, I mean, look, we always know that the Eagles are the more talented team, but the best team, the better team doesn't always win. As evidenced, by the way, last year Green Bay was 9-8. They were the 7 seed, and they beat the 2 seed Dallas. So by the seedings and the records, and this is why I go back to you and Ryan and Pete were filling in for me the one day, and you were talking about playoff seedings and teams with better records, and I'm against that wholeheartedly. To me, just because you have a better record doesn't necessarily mean you're a better team. And that's one reason why I don't think that. I think if you win the division, you should get a chance to host a home game.
I agree. And I'm with you on that. I think they keep the divisions. Winning your division means something. And that's why you deserve to have a home game. I get the argument with, like Minnesota this year, having all those wins. They're going on the road. Now they have to play in Arizona because of all of what's going on. It's in Los Angeles. Hopefully everyone's doing okay out there. But listen, I mean, this is a team where with the Eagles, they have pretty much home field advantage other than if they have to play the Detroit Lions. So if Detroit gets to the championship, that's the only road game they would have to play. You're the 2 seed for a reason, and winning your division, that means something. It holds value. And when you're playing at home, especially at the Link, it's going to be rocking, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I think you should have to win your division. And I want to see football is the only sport where winning the division and divisions still matter. Those division rivalries still matter. And one of the reasons is because winning your division gets you that home game. I think if you put a higher value on that in the other sports, like winning the Atlantic Division in the NBA, you get a top 3 seed. That would be a reason why you would think that division race. You don't even know what division half these teams are in the NBA anymore. But you know who's in the NFC East, the NFC South, the NFC North, and the NFC West because the winners of those divisions, it matters. I think if you win 11 games or 9, are you really that much better than the team that won? Look, teams that win 11 games and 7 aren't all that different. It's a play here and a play there that separates. So, Minnesota won all these games, and now it's too bad. That's the problem. You win your division, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, we've seen top seeds get knocked off by wild card teams plenty of times. I mean, that's happened throughout every sport in history. And then you go back to the NBA and kind of go into this division discussion a little bit and how much value we put on it. I wanted to talk about this. Like in the NBA, everyone like makes the playoffs. I know the play-in technically doesn't count as a playoff appearance, but I mean, you have 10 teams making it in, having a shot to go. That's the problem over there. There's so much value in the NFL by winning your division and having those teams have something to play for and beating teams in your own division twice. Like that puts a lot of value on those division games, and those rivalries mean more in the NFL more so the NBA. So that's another reason why I like the NFL playoff format much better than the NBA.
No doubt. Yeah. And you know, I don't want to add another team to the playoffs, but I wouldn't be 100% against if there was an 8th team and the top 2 teams, or even better, to put further value on winning your division. If you had an 8th team, the 4 division winners got a bye, and then the other 4 teams had to play on wild card weekend. So winning your division would mean that much more, that all 4 division champions got byes, and the 4 wild card teams had to play in the wild card round instead of division winners having to play in the wild card round.
Yeah, and it emphasizes those division games. I kind of like that idea a little bit. So I'm kind of with that. Add an extra team because I think winning your division should mean something. Beating those teams that you play twice a year should have extra emphasis on those. So I'm with you on that 100%. But I want to move the nugget number 3, and it's kind of talking about games in general and big games, right? So we have the Eagles coming up this weekend at home in Green Bay. And I know you've talked about it. You made it a text board question throughout the show of where are you going to watch the game? Where's the best spot to watch a game? I wanted to do this. Okay, Mike, would you rather nugget here? Nugget number 3, go to a NFL playoff game or a Major League Baseball playoff.
This isn't even a thought. This is a
which is better?
Answer.
Which would you rather be at and sit and watch the game?
Not even a question. Not even a question for me. It's baseball.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you were going to go football. I actually thought you were going to go football.
No way. Baseball 1,000,000% on this one. Baseball playoffs, baseball postseason in the building is the best. I mean, the drama, you're on your seat, you're at the edge of your seat. Football, like, if I never go to another NFL game, I will not care. I don't have to be at an NFL. I don't really prefer going to a game for the NFL. I'd much rather watch from home and watch the game there. Baseball, 1,000,000%. Look, I go to the Super Bowl every year. I could go to the game. I choose not to. I don't really care to go to the game, so I don't stay. When we go to Radio Row, I can stay and go to the game. I choose not to because I don't like watching football at the venue. I'd much rather watch the game on TV. Baseball, 1,000,000%. I'd rather be in the building and watch the game. Bang, I'm going baseball. Not even a question.
See, we're in lockstep today, which is very odd on pretty much all the nuggets, which is crazy to me. I am so with you on the baseball point. I would rather watch football on television all day long. I would sit on my couch, do nothing, have a couple of snacks, have my flats next to me in a warm, cozy environment, and watch football on television. Playoffs all day. Like Sunday, that's all I'm doing. All day, just laying there doing nothing. That is the best. Baseball, I want to be there. Baseball, there's so much aura surrounding it, and that is the best. The vibes at a baseball stadium and playoff baseball, I think in person,
I'll go one better.
Definitely
one higher.
More than football.
I would say I'd go to hockey in playoff in person more than a football game.
Oh, that's a tough one. Oh, that's a tough one. See, I've never been to a playoff hockey game in person, so I can't.
I've been to a bunch of
this.
Yeah, I've been to hockey in person playoffs a bunch of times. I would go to a hockey playoff in person over a football.
Even an NFC Championship game.
I've been to an NFC Championship game.
You'd still go hockey.
Hockey, yeah. Hockey's awesome in person to begin with. It's a much better sport in person. You go to a playoff game in person, it's like every pitch, you're on the edge of your seat. Every shot on goal, you're just like, oh my God. I mean, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, hockey, like if we could get a winning team around here when maybe they speed up this little rebuild they got going here, that'd be nice. So I could attend one because I will go sit in the nosebleeds for that, Mike. We already know how that's gonna turn out. But yeah, I think football, it's so much better on television. It is a sport made for television, especially with the NFL. I'd rather sit there and have my entire day surrounded by the football game. MLB, when you go to especially when you're at the Citizens Bank Park, there's no playoff atmosphere in baseball like Citizens Bank Park. So that's number one for me. Nothing's topping that.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I've been to a lot of Sixer playoff games, like, in the last couple of years here. I've been to a lot of those. I go watch basketball playoffs on TV. I don't have to be there. I go baseball, hockey, probably basketball, NFL's last. I have no care to go to an NFL football game.
Yeah, I'm cool watching it at home. And by the way, the worst, I think, game I went to was I sat by myself. I went to the one of the Sixers playoff games, and they got eliminated. So you're by yourself, and they get eliminated. That was awful.
That's a rough day right there. My worst was I went to the Eagles. I went to the Eagles NFC Championship game against Carolina. It was Eagles Panthers, and they lost that game. And then I parked so far away.
Oh no!
And getting into my car was like parked up on, I don't even remember where it was, but like I stepped in mud. My shoe was just caked in mud. I'm thinking, I never want to do this again. It's cold. It's messy out, these football playoff games, all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. We're in lockstep today on the Nuggets. It's a 3-pack for you today, Mike. I will be back on tomorrow, filling in for the Schweim with Clem and M on Saturday morning.
No Schweim for the big playoff weekend.
He'll be there Sunday, but he's got an obligation tomorrow.
Wow, that has got to have to be questioned by the fans of the locker room. He's not able to make it for a Saturday playoff weekend.
He may call in. There may be a call in from the Schwein.
Hey,
from his undisclosed location.
If you could call in, you could get here. That's what I'm saying. It's Eagles playoff time. The people demand the Schwein.
Well, he can wait. You're going on vacation. You're going on vacation. Yeah, he can
I'm one to talk. I'm one to talk, right?
Oh man,
you got me there. You got me there, Earnshaw.
I did. I got you there.
All right, that's another edition of Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Nick.
All right, Mike. Talk to you.
Nick's Nuggets, as always, are brought to you by the Piccalilli, Route 206 in Chemung. Make sure you call ahead to get into the Sunday lineup. And you know the Sunday lineup for an Eagle playoff game is going to be long and lengthy, so get in. Coming up next, it's Sal Pal Friday here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and live video streaming on the X platform and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe now and see the show. More Sports Bash coming up with ESPN senior national correspondent Sal Paolantonio next on the Sports Bash. All right, final hour of the show. It's a happy hour Friday. It's a Sal Pal Friday. ESPN's senior national correspondent Sal Paolantonio set to join me on a Sports Bash Friday, getting you ready for the Eagles and the Packers. Got a chance to catch up with Sal Pal earlier this week. Our guy Johnny G, we stopped by Uncle Bill's in Ocean City, and he took out the whole crew. Johnny G, Sal Pal, and me had a little breakfast over there at Uncle Bill's in Ocean City. It was great to see you, Sal, as we get ready for the Eagles playoffs, man. How are you?
I'm good, and yeah, it was a great morning, breakfast at Uncle Bill's, and Johnny G is the man, no question about it, at the Burger Realty in Ocean City, New Jersey. And, it's amazing to me, Mike, life is always full circle, right? I started this season talking to you on the Sports Bash from Sao Paulo, Brazil, Packers and Eagles, and here we are in the playoffs talking Packers and Eagles in South Philadelphia on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. Quite amazing, isn't it?
It is. It's like, hey, the season starts, and now the finality of it for one of these two teams, it's right here. And, we look back to that game, Sal. Sloppy field. There was a lot of penalties. It was a game one. Look, it had a lot of points. It had a lot going on, but it's probably going to be a lot different this time around. Take us back to what you remember, vividly about week one and that matchup.
Michael, I'll say the pregame, I just remember the players going on the field, and it was very reminiscent of the Super Bowl loss to Kansas City. They couldn't get the proper footing. The field was a mess. Chunks of grass were coming up under their cleats, even in pregame, and it was just a mess. And then during the game, he had 17 penalties for 128 yards. It was just sloppy, and the Eagles came out slow, as you remember. They were 3 and out, and then the next possession, Jalen Hurts fumbled. He had 3 total turnovers. Wound up being the first time in his career he had 3 turnovers and won a football game. Now, as for the penalties, it should be different because Brad Allen is your referee on Sunday in South Philadelphia, and Brad Allen called the 3rd fewest penalties in the NFL this year. An average is just 13 a game. He had a couple of outliers that actually got that number a little higher. So he doesn't really call a lot of penalties, but what he does call is a lot of roughing the passer. He had 10 roughing the passer calls this year, most of any NFL referee. So what does that say? Well, it says that Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts will be protected, but also guys who do a little extracurricular stuff with quarterbacks, I'm talking about Jalen Carter, have to watch themselves in this game because he's got a very itchy trigger finger, and he will pull that yellow hanky out pretty quick if he doesn't like what he sees.
Yeah, that definitely raises my eyebrows. You said Jalen Carter. I'm thinking Carter as well when you bring that up. And, Sal, you went down to Brazil for that first game, and, here we are. Jordan Love, you think about they knocked him out of that first game, but that's a rarity. He's been a tough guy to get to, and you wonder all season long, we've been wondering, can the Eagles get pass rush? Do they have enough pass rush? Well, Love has only been sacked 14 times in almost 500 dropbacks. So is that the story of this game?
I think it is, Mike. He's very tough to sack. He's only, as you said, had 14 sacks and 472 dropbacks this year. So he's got the 3rd lowest dropback percentage of sacks in the NFL this year. Very difficult. And he's got good pocket awareness, good pocket movement. He keeps his eyes downfield. He doesn't take off like a Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels or even a Jalen Hurts. He stays in the pocket, tries to buy time, and he looks for that crafty tight end. And I use the word crafty because that's his name. He's got a very crafty tight end that maneuvers in the middle of the field, and he was the most blitzed quarterback in the NFL because defensive coordinators just get tired of not being able to get to him. So he's blitzed, but here's the rub. Excuse me. The Eagles don't blitz.
Yeah. We know that. They don't like to dial up the blitz all that often. They blitz, I think, one of the second or third least amount in all of football. So how do they get the pressure on this guy?
Well, they got to make sure that Jalen Carter, double-teamed in most cases, can get home. The Packers' offensive line is good, but it's not great. And then if he's double-teamed, to get one of those defensive ends of the Eagles to get home free, Nolan Smith or Josh Sweat or somebody get free. But they're going to have to do a good job of being creative. And I'm talking about Vic Fangio in this game. He's seen the same numbers. He's seen the same film study that I have seen. And we got a great piece in the matchup show tomorrow on ESPN2, 8:30 a.m. Shameless plug for our show. By the way, our ratings, thank you for promoting our show, Michael. You do such a great job of promoting it each and every week. Our ratings were at all-time high this season, so thank you for doing that. But we got a great piece on the Eagles and the Packers in the show, specifically on the Eagles' defense, which to me is the outlier in this game. There's no question about it. They were number one. And the guy to watch, for me, Zach Baum.
Just named All-Pro, by the way.
Just named All-Pro. Pro Football Focus named him the number one graded linebacker in the NFL this year. To me, he's the key. He's got to handle Josh Jacobs. He's got to occasionally blitz. He's got to drop into coverage and take care of that really crafty tight end. He's got a lot on his plate in this football game. He is the key to the Eagles' victory defensively. No question about it.
Well, Sal, that game in Brazil, you were there. You saw it. It was his coming out party. He had 15 tackles and 2 sacks in that game. And, the talk on Monday was, do the Eagles have an all-pro linebacker? We almost scoffed and laughed at the possibility. Well, 19 weeks later, yes, they did have an all-pro linebacker, and it all started in that game against the Green Bay Packers. But one guy who wasn't on the field that I think makes a big difference in this game is Cooper DeJean. When you remember back to that game, Jaden Reed had the big touchdown. He did it against Avante Maddox. Well, no Maddox this time around. He's got Cooper DeJean. How does that change things?
And Cooper DeJean did not give up a touchdown pass all year long. That's amazing for a rookie quarterback. So Quinyon Mitchell, who was having a Pro Bowl year, gave up 2 at the end of the year. DeJean has not given one up. And I think he's in a strong spot. He missed the early part of the year, which means he hasn't had the same kind of rookie wall that he's had to face. And he's such an important part of what they do defensively.
Yes, he is. And again, he did not play in the opener. That's one big difference. We talked about Zach Baum. By the way, Nakobe Dean both rank among the top 7 linebackers in run-stop win rate. So that's one thing that the Packers do very well, Sal. You saw them. They run the ball really well. But Philadelphia, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, those 2 linebackers, that will be a fun matchup.
Yeah, they do run the ball well, and they do take the football away. And the 2 things that the Eagles have excelled at in the second half has been run stopping because of the several levels of very good tackling. And after the bye, Vic Fangio made the practices longer and put a re-emphasis on tackling. Get a body part on the ground. I heard it a million times. Get a body part on the ground. And it's worked. So, and the other thing is turnovers. I mean, man, oh man, they've been taking them away, taking the football away. So, and holding on to the football. Jalen Hurts had 3 in Brazil, and how many did he have total in the 10-game win streak? Right. I think 3.
Well, Sal, let's talk about Hurts, because when you and I and Johnny G were breaking bread or omelets or bagels on Wednesday morning there, the discussion was about Hurts and the complexity of him not being cleared. And you said, if you want to talk concussions, you got to call Uncle Sal. So he was finally cleared. Give us a little insight on this week of getting him back ready to go.
Well, it was a very painstaking process. The concussion protocol is complex for a reason. Concussions have been bedeviling the NFL and NFL players for years, and they believe they finally got a handle on it. Not preventing them as much as they would like, very difficult to do. It's a full contact sport, but in recovery from them. And they're very careful and very specific. And the one thing that they try to do, according to the concussion protocol, and when we spoke this week he was probably in phase 4, and then we found out on Wednesday that he was. Phase 4, which means he was going to get back on the practice field. They do a lot of neurocognitive testing, according to phase 4 concussion protocol, and balance testing. And one of the things that I watched on Wednesday was him straddling the 4x4 practice dummies vertically so that he had great balance when he was throwing the football. And after phase 4, you're supposed to be tested for balance. So presumably they did that. We can, basically we can deduce that they did that based on what we saw and based on what the concussion protocol says. And he passed with flying colors, so he's ready to go.
He's ready to go, but the slow starts for Philadelphia has been a concern. Is that something they've overcome? Are they past that, or is that something that will enter your mind at 4:30 at the Link on Sunday?
It's something we will all be watching, right, Mike? First of all, when they said he was not going to play in the preseason, Jalen Hurts, when Nick Sirianni said we don't need to play Jalen Hurts in the preseason, we have very intense practices. The practices are just as good as a preseason game, and he'll be ready. And he was flat. The whole offense was flat, and Saquon bailed him out.
Mm-hmm.
And so did the defense in red zone defense. Remember, Jordan Love had 4 trips into the red zone in that game in Sal Pal, and he was 1 for 4. If he's 2 for 4, they win the game.
Yeah. There's no question about the fact that first game, too, as you mentioned, 17 penalties in the game. There was a lot of, penalties. There was drop passes, too. They had a lot of drops in that game, if you remember Green Bay. So they have a lot. I'll tell you, they were the 7th seed. They put a 48 spot up on Dallas last year. Their coach, when you take a look at this, no coach is better as an underdog. You want to bet them. They're 25-10 against the spread as an underdog. They got to be going in feeling pretty confident, this Green Bay team. When you look back, Philadelphia turned the ball over 3 times in the game. They still won. So if you're Green Bay, you probably feel like, hey, this isn't an insurmountable matchup for us.
Yeah, no, I think they think they're playing with a little house money. Eagles are home, number 2 seed, no question about it. And the Packers will come in there, I think, playing loose and fancy free.
All right, Sal Paolantonio here. Let's get the Sal Pal's keys of the game for this week. It's a big one because obviously the loser goes home, and if it's Philadelphia, the loser, that goes home. I did hear you this week on with Carlin and Bart say that Nick, they win this game, that he probably should get a contract extension. Well, there are people that say if he loses the game, he probably should be let go here. So what are some of the keys for Philadelphia to avoid that conversation on Monday?
Well, I think the first thing is don't be sloppy. It's without a doubt. You're in the playoffs. The number one indicator, and I learned this from Dick Vermeil a very long time ago, the number one indicator in the playoffs is the quarterback protecting the football. You can't turn the ball over 3 times and expect to win in the playoffs, Mike, because the teams are better. They're more developed. You can't do that. So no turnovers, and I'm talking none. Take care of the ball. Make sure the ball is the program. No drop passes, that kind of thing. Plan 2, play under control. We don't want to see, as I mentioned at the very top of this discussion, you don't want to see Jalen Carter getting some cheap shots on Jordan Love that extends drives when they're about to get him off the field. Jordan Love is very good at 3rd down extensions, very good at 3rd down conversions. They stay on the field. So you've got to stay in a clean game. Don't be sloppy with the football. Don't give away any kind of cheap things. And then Jordan Mailata said something to me in the locker room when I was there on Wednesday. He said the message on Monday from Nick Sirianni was, don't make the game bigger than it is. You're capable with your talent. You're capable with your execution. You're capable with your preparation to beat this team without having to make it feel too big. And I think that's really sound advice.
The message was, don't make the game bigger than it is. That's Nick Sirianni's message to the team. Sal Paolantonio, of course, here on the Sports Bash. Now, Sal will be back for a special Sal Pal Monday, due in part because I won't be here on Friday next week, which is a bad job by me. Totally get that. But Sal,
I don't know. Thailand sounds pretty good, Michael.
It does.
It's 0 dark 30 here in the frozen tundra.
Hey, listen.
I mean, Thailand looks. I haven't looked at the weather in Thailand, but it's got to be better than this. This is definitely Ice Station Zebra. So I will talk to you on Monday. I'm looking forward to it. I got the Eagles winning 24-20.
24-20, little knockout, drag out over at the Concrete Jungle, Lincoln Financial Field. And you can see Sal Paolantonio tomorrow morning, 8:30 with the matchup show. And then he'll be, I would imagine, featured all over Sunday NFL Countdown on Sunday to get you ready for all the action. And don't forget, it's that time of the year. We're post-holidays. We're getting ready for the next phase of the season. Don't forget Sal Pal's book, by the way. And Sal, you got the opportunity. My birthday's coming up here. Maybe I'll bring the book on the plane with me. And I got the book here. You gave me that a couple, bang, I got that. I'll bring it on the plane. When I come back, I'll give you a full expository.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, I'll talk to you Monday, Michael. You're the best.
All right, man. Sal Paolantonio, everybody, here on a Sal Pal Friday. He likes Eagles 24-20 to win the game, and there you go. He gave you his 3 keys of the game. We'll recap them quickly for you here. Don't be sloppy, no turnovers, and that's number 1 key. And the no turnovers thing, but the sloppiness. They were sloppy the first game. It's the opening week of the season. How much have you cleaned up since then? They also turned the ball over 3 times in that game in week number 1. Number 2, play under control. He brings it to the conversation we had earlier in that conversation. The official for the game throws the flags for late hits on the quarterback. As soon as he said it, what are we all thinking? Everybody in the listening audience, when he said that, we all thought the one thing, right? Jalen Carter. That's what we all thought. Everyone. As soon as he said it, I said, oh, Jalen Carter. The referee in the game, what was his name? Brad. Let me go back to, I'm trying to remember what he said. I'll think of it. Brad Allen. Brad Allen's the referee. The 3rd fewest penalties in the league this year. But the one flag he does throw is for late hits on the quarterback. And by the way, we've all seen how ticky-tack some of these hits on the quarterback can be. And Jalen Carter is the one guy on this team that you're thinking, oh, man, 3rd down and 7, you get a stop, and then there's the laundry. Brad Allen comes up to the mic, roughing the passer, number 98 on the defense. You just can't have it. And this is insight that only Sal Pal can get because he said he talked to Jordan Mailata, who told him the message from Nick Sirianni. Don't make this game bigger than it is. And I love the message. You know why? Because this isn't the Super Bowl. This is a wild card game, and you're the favorite. Don't make it bigger than it is. Just super sloppy field in game 1. 17 penalties in game 1. This is by the way, I don't know if you saw the pictures of this. They ripped the turf up at Lincoln Financial Field. They put new sod in for this game this week. They ripped the turf up from the game against the Giants, and they put brand new sod in. Sal Pal brought up another point that I did not remember, did not recognize. The game in Brazil, Green Bay, 4 trips to the red zone. They went 1 for 4. And as Sal mentioned, they go 2 for 4. The Eagles lose that game. So your red zone defense, and we talked about this earlier in the week, Darius Slay brought it up. Why is their team better? Red zone defense. They've been practicing it since all the way back in OTAs. So red zone, 4 trips in Brazil, 1 for 4. Why? Because the Eagles stress it. That's Darius Slay who brought that up. We start out in the red zone. We did it since OTAs. I love that because I'm a big proponent of the OTAs, and there's so many times where people are like, those OTAs, you can't. No, I disagree. OTAs, to me, anytime you can get your team on the field, you take advantage of it. Anytime. 609 403-0973. Coming up, it's often imitated, never duplicated. It's one thought every game. Casey Joyner joins me next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We go through one thought every game. We'll get all his thoughts on the Eagles and Packers. What's the matchup to watch in this one? It's the Sports Bash. Don't forget, my friends from the Nizams Indian Restaurant, Route 40 in Egg Harbor Township. If the Eagles win, you win. Check out the Eagles football special, free tandoori spicy chicken wings when the Eagles win. South Jersey's best Indian cuisine is open 7 days a week, 11:30 to 9:30, and they have a special lunch buffet on Sundays. Eagle Game Day from 11:30 till 3. Visit thenizams.com for more information. When we come back, it's the football scientist from The Athletic, Casey Joyner. One thought every game. Next. All right, 527 Sports Pass Live, 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to Sal Pal on a Sal Pal Friday. He'll be back on Monday to recap the Eagles and the Packers. We're going to get a preview of the Eagles and the Packers right now. One thought, every game, every playoff game, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Casey Joyner from The Athletic is here. We got 6 games in all this weekend. We're going to take a look at each and every one of them, but a little closer look at the Eagles and the Packers first with Casey Joyner from The Athletic here on the Sports Pass Live on 97.3 ESPN. It's a rematch from Week 1, Casey Joyner, and you don't see that all that often. The teams that meet in Week 1 meet in the playoffs. It's happened 4 times. The team that lost the first game wins the playoff game all 4 times. So the Packers feeling pretty good about themselves. But how different are these teams from when they played in Sao Paulo, Brazil, to when they play in South Philadelphia on Sunday?
I think for one, the Eagles came into the season. You've got Barkley. Is this really what we're going to be? Are we going to be that big of a Barkley team? And they were, but on that field, you couldn't. It was a skating rink. He did great on it, but it was tough to say this is establishing our identity and who we are. And so they're a different team now that they know exactly what they could be with him. As far as Green Bay goes, you're going to hear this a number of times during my analysis today. I'm still not sure that Green Bay knows exactly what they are. I mean, are they a Josh Jacobs-centric team? Are they a Jordan Love-centric team? Is Jordan Love, is he just a good quarterback, a really good quarterback? Is he a great quarterback? Can we beat a good team? I'm not sure that they have the identity that they want heading into the postseason the way the Eagles do.
Let's talk a little bit about Green Bay's offense because they lost Christian Watson. When you look at that from your perspective, what does that mean for their offense?
He's the vertical threat. And they've got really good receivers. They have a deeper receiving core as far as from top quality from top to bottom. They have a better receiving core, probably deeper receiving core than any team in the league. Their starters, may not be as good as in fact, they're not as good as the Eagles. But if you said 4 or 5 deep, they're that good. But Watson is the real difference maker. He's the one who he tears the top off of defenses. And he could do it in a way that the other receivers can some, but he's the one who can really do it in a way that they can't. So, they can find ways to still manufacture plays, but he's just somebody who you could send downfield and say, just go ahead and beat somebody over the top, and they don't have that. So it is a pretty big loss for them.
All right, let's flip it around real quick because the first game they played, Cooper DeJean was not in that game. Jaden Reed had a big day. How does Cooper DeJean change the Eagles' defense and this passing matchup here? You talk about the depth in their receiving core. Slay, Mitchell, DeJean. You got C.J. Gardner-Johnson lurks back there. Cooper DeJean, though, him coming to this defense, he was not there in the first week.
He wasn't. And the thing is if I said about the Eagles, okay, what's the strength of their defense? I mean, it's one of the big strengths is depth in the secondary. That you got a lot of receivers who can get open. Okay, we've got a lot of good coverage people. We've got a lot of people we can move into coverage mode, and it's something that I don't think that Green Bay sees that often. You don't see with any team that has quite as much talent as the Eagles do. And the Eagles have had some shutdown pass coverage metrics this year. Of late, their metrics have gotten more towards middle of the road. A variety of factors caused that. I still think talent-wise, they're probably even better than what their metrics are. So it's one of those things where, again, if you're Green Bay, you're going, okay, can we throw against these guys? Like, you don't have a matchup. If you're Green Bay looking at all the matchups, I'm not saying this guy is somebody I can go after and target, and this is my a pigeon today. This is somebody I'm going to target. I'm going to go after. They don't have that. And that's what the Packers like to do is say, we've got so many people. You have to figure out who, you're going to have to cover all of them. We'll just find the matchup we like. I don't see that they have that sort of matchup. They can go to any receivers are good, but I don't think there's a mismatch for them anywhere.
Well, and the first matchup, they knocked the Eagles, did Jordan Love out of the game. I want to talk about the pass rush from Philly against that offensive line. Only 14 sacks on Love this year. So they don't give up a lot of sacks, but it's not like an elite offensive line. I find this to be an interesting matchup.
They're middle of the road in pass pressures. If you look at pass pressure percentage, they're middle of the road. I mean, they're not a bad team pass block in that sense, but they concentrate on getting sacks away and all that. And mind you, their average time to throw over the last 4 weeks of the season, 3 seconds. That's middle of the road. So they'll say, hey, we're not gonna just do dink and dunks. We're gonna go ahead and throw vertical passes. One of the things those teams were blitzing them a lot of late. I think they wanted to make sure they got pressure onto onto Jordan Love. And I think it's something that the Eagles, they're not known for having a big pressure rate, and the Eagles don't get a lot of sacks late in the year, but their pass pressure rate's been really good. So I'd be curious to see if the Eagles go, hey, teams do want to blitz this guy. Do we need to go ahead and blitz him, or can we just get pressure? I think they'll try pressure first, and blitz will be plan B.
Talking with Casey Joyner from The Athletic. One thought, every game on the Sports Bass Live, 97.3 ESPN, Eagles and Packers. Is it a Saquon game, or is this a A.J. Brown / Devontae Smith game?
I think the Eagles want it to be a Saquon game. They always want it to be a Saquon game. Mind you, the Packers, though, in the last 4 weeks of the season, they were fifth in the league, and I measure some things about fantasy metrics, fifth in the league in rushing fantasy points allowed per game. So that's pretty good. And that's a situation where it's like, okay, hey, they can stop the run. Again, I don't think anybody can completely stop Barkley. I don't think that that's going to be the case for them. But if I'm looking at the Eagles, I'm going, okay, do I want to do that, or do I want to have to go to a Green Bay secondary that has some weaknesses in their secondary? Keyshawn Nixon's not been great. Carrington Valentine might be out there. They've got some people. Their safeties are really good. So if I'm thinking of a matchup that they really want to go after, I think it would be the Green Bay cornerbacks. I think there's some weaknesses in that secondary there where you could say, hey, you don't have people who can cover. Like, you've got really good receivers. We've got great receivers. And we've got really good cornerbacks to cover your really good receivers. You don't have a great cornerback to cover our great receivers. So I think they always want it to be a Saquon-centric game, but I think it'll be a little more pass-heavy than usual.
Well, and then, of course, you have the Eagles' offensive line that's like a neutralizer and everything. If they are struggling to throw the ball, as we saw in the first game, hand it to Saquon, and one of these times he'll bust a big one.
He will, and that's the thing. In Saquon, you could do so many different things. I mean, the number of things that he can do, and he could be great at. If you want to run power, he can run power. You want to run counter, he can run counter. You want to just do gap plays and have him hit that, he reads those great. He does a fantastic job there. If there's cutbacks available, he'll do it. He follows his blockers well. He times things up properly. He does exactly what he should there. You want to run outside zone? Yep, he'll press, and he'll only make cuts when he needs to. You want to run wide zone to get to the corner? He can do that. You want to run inside zone or mid zone? He could do that. You want traps? He can do it all. I mean, he's just that kind of a back. And so many backs have a few things they do well, but they can't run the gamut of all the things you can do in the ground game, and he does. So it's one of those situations where we talked about even from the beginning of the year with Kellen Moore. He's a great run play caller. I wouldn't be surprised to see him pull some, I don't want to say trick plays, but some creative running plays out there too, to say, hey, Green Bay, you've got a really creative defense. I'm going to make you think about the ground game because I really want to go to the air, and I'm going to make sure that you have to think about Barkley. Even if you don't think about him breaking away because your defense fits the run pretty well, we're still going to make you think about it schematically so we could do some things to the air we want to do.
All right, we'll get your thought and who wins the game at the end of this conversation. But let's take a look at one thought every game here on the Sports Bass Live on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, the first game on Saturday, it's the Houston Texan Invitational. They open as a 3-point home dog versus the Chargers, the home underdog in the wild card. They're 29-1 all-time with a winning outright record of 16-14. Last year, both home underdogs won outright. The Packers were one of them. Will the Chargers follow suit against the Texans?
Well, the thing is, the Texans, they don't handle bully ball very well. We saw that against Baltimore a few weeks ago. They're not good at handling that. In fact, when they give up 100 more yards this year, they've done that 10 times. They're 4-6, and that trend's gotten worse as the season progressed. They've lost the last 5 games to give up 100 more rushing yards. And Bill Belichick said in one of his podcasts recently that if you're in a weak division, you just don't get it. Teams, where you don't have a powerhouse division where you got mediocre teams. You just don't get tested, battle tested for the playoffs. I did a study in a book years ago too, and found that the stronger the division you were in, the better your chances were of doing well in the playoffs. And look, Houston's just not that kind of a team. And the Chargers now have J.K. Dobbins. And is J.K. Dobbins healthy? Yeah, 37 carries and 4 receptions in 2 games since he returned. They're going to lean heavily on him. I think they get a ton of rushing yards. I think Houston can't keep up. I'm taking the Chargers.
All right. A lot of people like the Chargers this week. Texans had Super Bowl aspirations. The season just kind of went awry. A lot of injuries, especially at the wide receiver position there for them. All right, Saturday night, Mike Tomlin, Jim Harbaugh, the matchup. Underdogs in this matchup, 25-10-1 against the spread. They're 20-16 outright. It smells like a Steeler game. The Steelers are 13-4-1 against the spread and 10-8 outright as an underdog in the Tomlin-Harbaugh matchups. The Baltimore Ravens just beat them pretty handily a couple of weeks ago, but do the Steelers get revenge?
This is one of those things where it's kind of like Michigan, Ohio State, where all it takes is one win necessarily to turn the dynamic around. It can't take more than one. And Michigan to do it 4 times now before they really have Ohio State's number. But if it takes one win to show that you can handle that team, and the thing is, prior to that win this season, Baltimore lost 8 out of 9 to Pittsburgh. And every time they get close and Pittsburgh would beat them, and not only they beat them, they beat them handily. They ran for 220 yards. I think that game reset the dynamic of Baltimore saying, hey, this is who we are. Who's the bully team in this division? And I think that was Baltimore saying, we are the bully team in this division. Pittsburgh's secondary, by the way, is not very good either. So if they do have to throw, they've got some weaknesses back there. But I think Baltimore's just going to come out and say, hey, you know what? This is the kind of football we beat you on a few weeks ago. And I think it's one of those things where now they know they could beat Pittsburgh in that kind of ball game. I just think the Steelers struggle to stay up. So I think Baltimore's going to win. I don't know if they cover, but I think they win.
All right, one thought every game. Let's go to the Sunday slate, the early game. It's the 6th wild card game since the wild card round was instituted in 1978 to feature a top 3 scoring offense, Buffalo, versus a top 3 scoring defense, Denver. Bills are 2nd in points per game. The Broncos' defense is 3rd in opponents' points per game. What gives?
I do not understand why people aren't taking Denver more seriously. I mean, right now, BetMGM has the Broncos listed at +9. I mean, the Bills are 9-point favorites. I can't get that because the Broncos have only one overwhelming loss this season. They lost 41-10 at Baltimore Week 9. They nearly won at Kansas City, went toe-to-toe Pittsburgh and the Chargers. These are their losses. They went toe-to-toe Pittsburgh and the Chargers twice in LA's case, dominated Tampa Bay, handled their business against destroyed Kansas City's backups. They've not lost games big all year. They beat top teams, and all their losses have been close. So I'm looking at going, I do not understand why people think that they can't keep up. Bo Nix is really good. The receiving core is underrated. They've got a hodgepodge of running backs, but they have an effective ground game. That's what you need. I like all of that, and I think they'll stay competitive. But Josh Allen is still Josh Allen. I mean, they posted 30 more points in 8 straight games at one point this year. The defense forces a lot of turnovers, and Allen, in some of those games they're putting up 40. I just think Buffalo has too much firepower. I don't think they win I don't think they cover the spread. I think they win, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think.
You've been on Denver for a while here. Casey Joyner from The Athletic here. One thought every game. Let's go to Sunday night. The Bucs and Commanders. They both can score. Both ranked top 5 points per game this season. 4th time in the wild card era, 2 teams have met in the wild card round when they average more than 28 points a game. What gives in this one?
That should be a very fun game. The Bucs had their problems. They were doing great early in the year. Godwin and Evans get hurt in that Monday night game, and then they had the Week 11 bye, and since then they've been so much better. They've got a vertical game. Jalen McMillan's may give them another threat. It's not equal to Godwin, pretty close. They've tallied 223 points the past 7 games. They've had a fantastic running game, too. They got the passing game going. And that 7-game stretch, they gained 1,283 yards on the ground in 7 games. That's really impressive. Now, Washington gets Jaden Daniels. He gets hurt against Chicago. He's not quite the same there, but Washington's put up 100 more rushing yards in 6 straight games, and he's played a ton better. And they put up 26 more points in 68 meaningful games since Chicago. So they're both doing really well. Here's the thing. Scoreboard shootout, probably going to get there. Each team scores 24 more points. That's definitely a shootout. Washington 3-2 in shootouts this year. Tampa 1-5. I think Tampa's got an inconsistent defense. I think Washington's defense is just a bit more consistent, and I think they do handle high scoring situations better because of that. So I'm taking Washington, but it's close.
All right, one thought every game here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. This one is obviously Monday night. The Rams taking on Minnesota. The game has now moved to Arizona with the fires that are happening in L.A., so it has added a little bit to this game in terms, although they did sell a bunch of tickets today. I'm happy to hear that people are going to get a chance. The Rams use play action, the 3rd highest rate in the league. Stafford, very good there, top 5 QBR when you go play action. But they'll face a Vikings team. It's the lowest QBR on play action in the league. So will play action work for the Rams against this Vikings defense?
Thing is, the Rams have been playing a lot of slugfest games of late. I don't know that that's what you want to do against a Brian Flores defense. Brian Flores is super creative. When you watch things on tape and things, He does things. He's Belichickian. I mean, he's studied under Belichick for so long in that you'll look at him and think, and okay, you try and get a beat on what he's doing. He throws one thing out there. If you adjust to that, he's throwing another. Sometimes he just throws things out there just to make sure you have another thing to look at. He really wants to make the other quarterback, another coach, really think about what they have to do. So it's a tough defense to face. If you figure them out, though, once you figure out if you get a beat on what they're doing, then talent-wise, they're not quite as good. And I think McVay will do that. But here's the key about this game. I mean, Cooper Kupp's not doing very well of late, and that's one of the reasons that LA is not playing as shootouts anymore. But the key is going to be whether or not the number of points the Minnesota scores, because Los Angeles has an 8-0 record when they allowed 22 or fewer points. The Rams allowed 15 or fewer in 5 of those games. Minnesota, though, has scored 23 or more points in all but 4 games this year. So can LA keep Minnesota below that 22-point mark? Because if they don't, then it's turning a kind of game that Minnesota likes. I think Minnesota is going to be able to score that many points. And with Kupp, and maybe he bounces back or something like that, but he's been bad, and it's all been Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams, and I just don't think that's quite enough to overcome what Minnesota could do in offense. So I'll take the Vikings.
All right, one thought every game. The Eagles beat the Packers 34-29 in Brazil week 1. There have been 4 times where in 20 years where the teams have played in week 1 and then met in the playoffs. The team that lost week 1 has then won the playoff game all 4 times. We talked about that. So these 2 teams will face in this moment here. Green Bay won this game as a 7 seed last year. They scored 48 at Dallas. So, does Green Bay say, hey, this is our spot, or is Philly a little too deep for the Packers?
What I loved about Week 18 for the Eagles is we got backups. We're playing the Giants. It's a meaningless game to us. They still won. I'm like, okay, because you look at this year, and that just added another thing, because now the Eagles, we have to run the ball. They can run to win. We have to pass the ball. We can pass to win. They use special teams. These special teams, that's fine. We need great defense. They've gotten that. The various games, they've had each of those things. And when the Giants said, look, we can win the backups too. We're a motivated team. We don't play down to our competition. We don't Tomlin. I've talked about that over years. We don't Tomlin in Philadelphia. We don't do that. That's a Pittsburgh thing. We don't play that game. I love the number of ways they have to win. Look at Green Bay, and I'm going, okay, Green Bay's got a share of victories, but a lot of those were against overmatched teams, and they face strong teams. They're 0-5 versus playoff qualifying teams. 0-5. They just don't win against those good teams. One of those was Week 17 against the Vikings, and then they had a Week 18 loss against Chicago. You losing to Chicago, and believe me, Green Bay doesn't want to lose to Chicago. I don't care if it's a meaningless game. It doesn't matter. They wanted to win, and they didn't. They're heading in on a down nut. They don't have anywhere near as many ways to win. And Philadelphia shows we don't play down to the level of our competition. I think Philadelphia gets a convincing win on this one.
A convincing win, says Casey Joyner from The Athletic, and he's here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. That is one thought every game. The playoffs this weekend right here on 97.3 ESPN. We have all the action, the Eagles and the Packers. Our coverage begins Sunday at 3 with the kickoff at 4:30 on 97.3 ESPN. Casey Joyner here on the Sports Bash. Thank you, pal.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, Casey Joyner, everybody, here on the Sports Bash is always brought to you by Elite Acura. Score incredible savings at Elite Acura all month long. And, of course, Casey Joyner here on the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by Elite Acura, Route 73, Maple Shade, online, EliteAcura.com. Coming up, we've got the Bet365 play of the day. I'll give you my Eagles picks, game balls. By the way, some news in the Sixer game tonight. The Sixers, everybody's hurt, but so is Zion Williamson. He's not hurt, actually. He has been suspended for the game, and he will not play. So the Pelicans without Zion, the Sixers without Embiid. Any update on Paul George? I know he was questionable.
No, but apparently the reason why Zion was suspended was late for the team flight.
Late for the team flight, will not play in the game tonight.
My feed is full of Zion story, like rumors right now.
Has Zion been the most disappointing hyped athlete of all time?
I mean, he definitely can go in the category of the top 5. I mean, I'm sure if we sat down for a good hour, we can come up with a good top 10 list.
Embiid is out. George is a game-time decision. Lowry is out. Drummond is out. And, of course, Jared McCain, they officially announced he is out for the season.
Yeah.
For New Orleans, Zion is out. DeJounte Murray is a game-time decision. Brandon Ingram is out. Trey Murphy is out. And Herb Jones is also out for New Orleans.
Yeah, Brandon Ingram's been out for a while, and it's hurting my fantasy basketball team.
It's an elite injured list right there. You got Zion, Ingram, McCain, Embiid, Paul George.
Like Zion.
546. Wrap it up with the Bet365 play of the day. Also, I'll give you my pick for the college football game tonight. That will be an unofficial play, by the way. Not putting that as my Bet365 play. That'll be an unofficial play for you. And I got my Eagles game balls and all that stuff and more. Coming up next on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 5:52, getting ready to get out of here on a Friday night. Happy Hour Friday to you out there. Bet365 play of the day. How'd we do yesterday?
Winners all around. 2-0, Mike. Warriors, Detroit stayed under. And Notre Dame, Penn State went over. So now you are 95, 66, and 1.
95, 66, and 1. Almost 30 games over 500. That's a lot of money for the people out there. And I'm going to make more money for you right now. Here we go. Bet365 play of the day. I like Baltimore against Pittsburgh on Saturday. I like the Chargers against Houston on Saturday as well. I like Texas tonight and the under in the game. 6.5 Texas and the under. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I like Ohio State 6.5 and the under 52.5. I like Ohio State over Texas to cover the game tonight. And that is my Bet365 play of the day. I got Eagles 31, Packers 23 in the game. Game balls are going out this week, too. I'm going to go Jalen Hurts gets my game ball this week. I think he's going to have a big bounce-back game, make a couple big plays, and have a big game. And on defense, my play of the game, my game ball this week is going right back to Zach Bond. He had a big game in week 1 against the Packers. Zach Bond, big game, big factor in the game on Sunday. Eagles win 31-23. They will move on, and who will they face? Well, the most likely candidate that they will face is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If the Bucs win, you will most likely face Tampa Bay. That's because if Washington wins, you cannot play Washington. There is no scenario in which you could play Washington because they are the 6th seed. They would automatically play the number 1 seed. The only scenarios would be Detroit plays the lowest seeded team that's left.
Correct.
So if Washington wins, they would go play Detroit. If Minnesota wins, they would play Detroit.
Yes.
If the Rams win, they would play Philadelphia because they cannot play Detroit as the 3. And that would mean if Tampa Bay wins and Minnesota wins, you would play Detroit. And Minnesota currently is favored in the game. So Tampa is a good possibility that you will play, but you will not know this until Tuesday.
But you'll have at least a theory as of Sunday night.
Yeah, you'll have some speculation. And we're going to speculate all about it on Monday. But for now, that's it for Happy Hour Friday and the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. Game night's up next, followed by Texas and Ohio State. Sixers Pelicans are on Rock 104.1. Have a great Friday, everybody.